being here. This is Zoning Bylaw Review Steering Committee, our third meeting. This meeting in particular, we really want to try to kind of get a better hold of what our anticipated articles would be for the spring. We'll probably have a more of an in-depth discussion later on regarding accessory dwelling units, and if anyone wants to go over the floodplain protection bylaw, that one is a little different because that's kind of standard language for the state. But I think the first goal that I provided kind of just like a brief question sheet of a few things I want to go over for everybody, and then be in a position afterwards to kind of gauge everyone's thoughts on how a cleanup article should look and how extensive that article should be. Obviously, we talked about this before in terms of do you provide here's a 200-page article, or do you want to kind of really make it a little more digestible? So I think we're all kind of in agreement digestible is better. So kind of just going into it, this question is kind of not so much actual content related, but it's something I came across that I wanted to kind of gauge anyone's interest on this. So format and numbering. There's a different way that we have it. I mean, everyone's kind of looked at the zoning bylaws. There's a mix of both numerical and letter separation. I've noticed a lot of communities just stick to numerical. Part of that has to do with just kind of it's easier to kind of cite somewhat for if you're I'm trying to bring it up really quick. It's easier to cite. It's easier to kind of remember sometimes something that's set up like that. So just as like a point of example, I want to bring. Here we go. So we'll go into this section 4. So we have a breakdown of. If we're talking about section 4, 2A1, 4.2A1, it's memorable, but a few different towns have. Oops, sorry, that's not the one. I believe this is Norwood's.
That's Norwood's, yeah.
So Norwood's bylaw has a setup that is, of course, let me just. It's the same thing. It's a breakdown of just numerical. Canton's bylaw, kind of similar. Actually, no, this is Westwood's bylaw, similar thing. This is just kind of just showing you that a few of our surrounding towns also kind of have a numerical setup, and depending on the extent of which we want to do that first housekeeping bylaw, if anyone kind of wants to think about this, it's not a change that needs to be made immediately, especially if something like this is done. It needs to be done for the entire bylaw, and it wouldn't be something you can just make this first session, but. I kind of would encourage anyone that wants to take a look at other towns and see how they set up. Our bylaw in terms of formatting as well. Like there's a lot of indents. The font itself is super small. You know what I mean? So that's like one of those things. Those are like little kind of like just kind of not so much content things, but just really like how is it as a readable document. And so. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or any interest to kind of discuss that now, but this is mostly just to think about for later on.
Yeah, I just want to say that if we reduce the amount of indentation, which I think is a good thing to do, it's better than to have the number 3.1.4 on each line, because that if they're not indented, then that way it clearly shows
the separation.
You're in a subsection. So I think that works well. Okay. Large font would be really desirable, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm in the 1.2.3 school.
I agree with Phil. Yeah. I think we should get away from A, B, whatever, and minimize the indentation, increase the font where possible, increase the readability wherever possible. Yeah.
Okay.
So just all numerical, all numbers, because I think your code's the same as mine. We would go like section 2. 1 in parentheses, then a lowercase letter in parentheses, and then I want to go 1 after that, and then it would be like numericals. That actually would it's like a small I.
Yeah,
so it'd be
you
like
jump
2,
into the
3,
code, so it'd be like section 3 be 306.3.2.
Yeah.
And then because each subsection would be part of that.
So you think the numbers are easier to go in a line rather than break it up with a letter? And
I think there's benefits to both. I am thinking I like the numerical just offhand a little bit better because I think, as you know, we talked about in terms of, for me, it's mostly just the indents as well as trying to create more of a, kind of be a little bit more similar to our surrounding communities. Not to say we need to be the same as everyone else, but I think having that is also makes you a little bit more.
I'm not sure if it would affect the indents all that much.
Yeah.
If you just use alternating numbers, letters, numbers or something and that.
Yeah.
Alleviating
True.
the indents, the idea of, yes, it's gonna stay spaced, it's not gonna take many pages, makes more sense. You
Yeah.
fit more of the section with fewer pages. I'm thinking of the use table, and there's multiple uses under each category.
Yeah.
That, you get, really having the letters there is beneficial,
Yep.
because you have at least some
use
26 numbers
table.
to go by.
So like letters for use table, I think I think some
I think
towns have
there's a
that
lot
as
of
well.
changes proposed with the use table, so that may look differently maybe. You know, if, the recommendation is to take out regulations, which it shouldn't be like half
Yeah.
regulations and half use and half.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, this is not that Norwood has like a great bylaw or anything, but just there's a breakdown of, there's letters and numbers used in the use table, so maybe use tables looked at a little bit differently.
Maybe.
And we don't need to make a decision right now. Anything like this would have to happen really at the end.
The idea of reducing the indents in order to
Yeah.
save space, instead of writing only this far, you
Yeah.
write this, the full page, whatever,
And even
Makes
just
sense.
and even if if we want to keep the letters or we want to go numbers, I think just the listing of the actual entire portion
Yes.
within it.
I agree.
That way you don't have to you're not
Right.
Oh,
looking
I
and
see.
remember.
There's
Yeah,
no
that's
ambiguity of
Just
what,
not 3 here, 1 here, 3 here, yeah,
Yes.
And you gotta
that's
scroll
much
back.
easier, yes.
Okay.
I agree.
you don't wanna have ambiguity what level you're at.
Yeah, cause
Your
I
numbers.
know, looking through here, it's like, okay, I'm looking at this paragraph, but what paragraph is it really? It says 4. Is it 1, 4, 2, 4,
Going
3,
back
4?
pages,
You have to
yeah.
backspace your way up to
Yeah.
find out what section it really
Yeah, much
competes
better.
on. That's much better,
Yeah, because we've come across people who've applied for like special permits or variances, and they're citing a section, and they've added an extra A or B or a 4. They've jumped down a paragraph, not realising it had moved, and they were citing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Now, I think consciously, a lot of laws, it's all numbers
Yeah.
now. I'm just wondering if it would work, like you might have 3.1.26 or something in some cases.
Yeah.
You're gonna have multiple, double digits in certain
I'm
cases.
thinking like site plan review.
Yeah, you
The
got like
requirement
9
section.
something
Yeah.
requirements or better in this section.
Yeah, I think that you're right. There might be a point where that kind of, in some areas, there might be 13 points.
We can maybe look at it and see, like, one column maybe needs to be a letter, like the
Yeah.
third column needs to be letters to allow for the multiple lists that come up. Maybe we can cut it down so that it's only
Yeah.
like one column that's letter based.
but we have that now too, if you look at section 5E4, it's earth removal, performance standards A, you'll see there's 15 numbered.
Yeah,
There's no avoiding, we're gonna have a lot of things in some
Yeah.
sections, but we can,
We can discuss
we can
that.
try different ways and see what works best.
And also just some sections that maybe kind of, you have like 20-something listed requirements. Well, if we keep this to the end, we'll probably review that at some point and be like, okay, we don't need 20-something requirements. We have a better way of writing this and not have to have it just be
Yes.
multiple bullet points. So I'll put a kind of, we're all kind of agreement, at least from the standpoint of reducing indents, increasing the font, having the section number listed at the front for each subsection.
Yeah.
So it's constantly, it's easily readable. Okay. All right. Any other comments on that before we're just moving on? All right. I'm gonna bring it. So, in the question document, I kind of want to revert back to our zoning diagnostic. So I provided both, obviously this is zoning diagnostic report from town council. I took a shot, I don't know if everyone has a copy in front of them or not, but of trying to do like a red line, but not really a red line, more or less kind of a before and after. I think we talked about some, whether that would be easier to read, just because sometimes the red line can be
Got this one here?
extensive. Yes, yep. And so, I don't know if anyone
Yeah, I'll take it, thank you.
So, section, we can go through the first 3 sections at first before we get into, I have a listing of questions starting in section 4, but I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look at that or has any general questions. I know we kind of agreed that section 1 and 2 in particular, wouldn't have had any major issues with those changes.
I didn't go through the changes really low level, but I did think that they added readability and better organization to what she did recommend.
Okay.
What you've been doing, your updates here.
Yep.
And particularly some of the organization of the, the bullet points. Sometimes there were things that,
Mm-hmm.
I thought were better the way, you did it or she did it.
Yeah.
Um,
And if it's printed out in black and white, it's a little hard to read because I
Yeah.
read that was helpful,
Yeah.
but didn't have a color printer.
For section 4,
Yep.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to mention it, but
Yeah.
the overlay,
Yes.
it's not listed in here about the East Walpole parking relief overlay, even though it's noted as an overlay in the bylaw. Should we add that to the list of overlays?
I think we should. So that kind of, I think, goes to.
Can I go with the red on the question? No,
This one?
that one, yeah. Is that one another one?
You can take mine.
No,
One
that's
right
fine.
there.
No, that's
No,
the-
I didn't print them.
This is the one that I didn't print because it was so long. I was
Oh,
like,
that's-
hopefully
I have
Pat
another
will.
one at the office.
Printed a few. I have a digital copy
Yeah, no,
if
I'm
anyone
good.
wants to take.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So you're talking about, this kind of goes to, what are you talking about? Description, purpose of district, section 4.2.
I think this is the section where East Walpole was given an overlay district, the same as CBD, where parking wasn't required.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's what it is, and it's you're right. It's listed in like the appendix. It's
Right.
not actually listed within the.
You're talking about the stadium.
No,
No,
the East Walpole parking relief
Oh,
overlay.
okay,
It's like
okay.
Appendix A
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
or something. I mean, it's
Oh,
It's
the
there with a
the
map.
is-
Yes,
Yeah.
East Walpole years ago was given an overlay where it's the same as the CBD district in the centre of town. Businesses, commercial, do not require parking spaces.
This one.
It's interesting because there's really no other uses for it or purpose for it other than
Yeah.
to say that.
I mean, maybe we don't call it an overlay, maybe we do, but if it's
Yeah.
called an overlay, it
Can't we
should
call
be
it
there.
central business district?
Well-
There's nothing that says it has to be, central business has to be just one place, does it?
Well, no, so this map shows East Walpole to say that's where it's allowed. So we can't say just business district because then it opens up to all business districts.
Yeah.
Well, no, but if if this was labeled central business district,
No.
I'm not sure if it is. like-
No.
I'm just gonna bring it up so we.
No, so it's down like around Jimmy's Pizzeria down that in town.
Mhm.
So that's a business district which would require parking.
This is the reference to it. There's really, now this isn't like the MBTA or the solar voltaic where there's it has a bunch of, this has a use and it has a litany of requirements. This only exists really to say that there's not a parking requirement.
Yeah.
Perfectly honest, I mean, like, it might be interesting maybe not this exercise, but later on to kind of explore the East Walpole area in general in terms of future use, but, yeah, I mean, we could reference this, and I think that's appropriate.
Or maybe we change it to like just an image as a part of the parking regulations and just call it like, this is,
Figure something, yeah.
something related to, I don't know, cause I guess it's an overlay, I don't know,
True.
does it really need to be considered an overlay here?
But it isn't in the listings for overlay districts either.
Right,
So it probably should be included in that list.
That's a good question, so that's the question. I will
What
bring back.
what do they list that as?
It's
Is it
not.
CBD?
No, it's a
No.
business district, so there was
Well,
something put in years
Is it
ago.
multiple uses listed in there, or?
No, it's just strictly the business district that is. So, from what I found out, it was put in there years ago because down around there you got St Mary's Church, the firehouse. There's no real lot of on-street parking. The land, the buildings take up most of the land. So,
Right.
besides between St Mary's and the firehouse is their parking lot.
This
And
is
that's
the
it.
only reference
Mention
to it.
of it.
This is section 8.9, so the parking.
Yeah.
And it listed as C attaches appendix A, so it's, again, it's listed as overlay district, and I guess in effect it is, but it's oddly kind of just shoved in here and
Right.
not really.
So it's in the parking section, but that's not, it's referenced there as the.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
to Sarah's point, do we have this as like a figure and maybe relabel it and then include it in the parking and rather than have its own?
Page included in the
Yeah.
parking itself.
I think that's better. I mean, it's only referred
It
to
makes
as
sense,
parking,
yeah.
like within a
So
certain
but
district.
You don't
so-
see it in the back of the book, yeah.
Yeah, unless you look like if you were doing a review on, and that's the reason I know it, if you are doing a review on your business district, that wouldn't come out in front. You'd be going, okay, my parking is this, I'm required this amount of parking.
Right.
Unless you knew this existed, you kind of wouldn't really go knowing that you're exempt from parking. So like the old 204, like they have a few next door
Yeah.
between them and the barber shop, but realistically other than that, they've no more parking
Not
anywhere else.
anymore because they're separate. When 2 and 4 are open, they had to deal with the repair garage
Mhm.
across the street,
Yeah,
that they would use that parking at nighttime because that language wasn't in there at the
Yeah.
time when they opened, so they added this afterwards, and then that parking must have disappeared. So what are the negative effects if that area was designated as CBD?
No,
well, it could be
can't have it
designated. You can't be designated CBD because CBD is the. So this is an overlay. It's not a zone. It's just overlaid
No,
on,
but-
on that map.
I
Yeah, but
think
if
the
it was
argument is,
rezoned?
what if we do away with the overlay and just label all that section as CBD?
Well, so that's a zoning
gives
change.
you
But the
different-
That's a
zoning
separate-
change, right,
yeah.
would have to
But that's
be
easy, that's
filled
only
I think the
majority
neighbors
vote
would
now.
not-
So now you're going to take. You're,
out.
so
No,
think
we'd have
about-
to look at all the individuals to see how it would affect them all.
Well, how it'll affect the business. Now you've just a simple example is now you've went from business to one that can only have twice the
So
first floor.
You're right.
Now you've gone to
Yeah,
3.5
yeah,
times the
right,
first
I
floor.
hadn't thought-
You've increased the height as well.
Right.
So
that's-
it could have a
okay,
so
that's
You're
what I
right,
was
all the
thinking,
little
negative
things you
effect.
don't think about when.
Jump
you-
in.
Yeah.
So you think you're doing
Good
like
point, yeah.
you could change the underlying zoning. You could also think about moving or having a sub-district of MBTA over there. Not to say that, MBTA in particular, but you could just do it as an overlay
Looking at
district.
the page,
and you
half
want
the
to expand
page is
uses.
blank, we could almost shrink this map down and fit it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Depending on what
we,
else happens.
we can also just redo the map. I mean, it's an older figure, so if we, probably not for, this is a future purpose, but we get to kind of redoing section 8, maybe just kind of, you can do another printout of the figure or something that's a little bit more readable.
Yeah.
What you could to add if you wanted is in the table of contents. Like we have all these footnotes with the table of contents. On the parking, you could put an extra asterisk here that if you're in the business district,
Yeah,
that there's an asterisk that if you're in this appendix, so it'll draw your attention to it.
yeah.
Because we have like say you have the appendix for some in the residential area, or 3.4 takes you to the table at the end of these. That's basically allows for like the 0 setbacks when you're against train tracks. The accessory structures are in there to a degree. We could add an asterisk here or a small b in the business district. So if you were looking through what you're allowed to do, and then you see this b, the footnote at the bottom of this is b. If you're in East Walpole, you have this overlay there. So it's
Easy, it's-
Yeah.
be a quick
it
fix.
links it up, at least it shows something there. that
Yeah.
points you.
And you could, as you said, you could shrink the map and put the map on that page with it, so that
Yeah.
it sends you directly there and you get both.
The thing is, I'm not even sure if, I could be wrong, but I'm not even sure if all of this is business.
Yeah, I think as far as the residential.
There might be some GR within there.
Yeah,
Maybe not.
I
but
think
mean,
there is.
Yeah.
because over at
It-
Main
it's
Street, at least those
particular.
first two, I think. Well,
That's LM.
That's
So
LM.
that's the yellow building on the corner.
That's the old movie theater or something.
Yeah,
And
so
Peggy Lawton's in there.
Yeah, but Peggy Lawton isn't in there though, right?
the Peggy Lutton's on.
To the left of Main
To
Street,
the-
to below Main Street, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is probably a much more
No,
of a
there's-
substance
that's
discussion, because I think there is, there's benefit to looking into that
Yeah.
area in general of how do you want to revitalize that area?
Sure.
Do you want to try to create additional uses? But when it comes to the existing overlay district, I'll bring that question to council, and maybe that it's a kind of just a minor change. If anything, we could put reference to it within the overlay districts, and maybe if anything, just kind of like I don't want to do a parentheses, but some sort of
Footnote
reference
or
that
something.
it's like as reference within appendix
Mhm.
A or something like that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that does
For the
mix.
time being.
It mixes business. So where your cursor is right now,
Yeah.
that's LM.
Yep.
And then the parcel to the left, the bigger parcel, that's St. Mary's.
Yeah.
No, it's the wrong side of the street. St. Mary's is on the right side.
The daycare there.
That one?
That's part St.
Well, that's the big one.
That's the
right
parking
there.
lot
Yeah,
right there.
that's the
right,
parking lot.
right.
St. Mary's is left. And then you got, it's a DNA auto body or something.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
probably the last one before May
Main
Street.
Street's a little dead end that goes into
Yeah.
the athletic field, so
And then you're
below
on
that
to,
is
is
Peggy
the,
Lawton.
yeah.
You're right.
Now, is that in the business district, Peggy Lawton? But it's not in the
It's not-
parking exempt.
Yeah, it's not the
right?
parking exempt.
But it's
Yeah.
still
Well, no,
business.
no one parks there except the employees, really.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's just employee parking. is all
yeah.
they have.
One or two neighbours leave their work
Yeah,
trucks
yeah,
there
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
like.
yeah.
They don't sell out of it or anything,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
Now, they just come back with the peanut butter cookies.
Yeah. I think there's a bigger discussion here just about this area in general, which could be kind of looked into. I mean, in terms of, it's part of this whole process, and I think we could make it part of this whole process, but there's, October 24th right now, tonight, maybe just
Yeah.
I'll put a pin in it, and we can have it, I can reference that
Oh,
to town
definitely.
council, of like, should we also include this within the overlay district?
Sure.
And then that's considered more or less a minor change.
Mm-hmm.
I also made, alright, if it, I'm wrong one. So section 4.2, there was a question from town council in terms of the definitions of each district. These need to be revised, expanded further. There was a few changes that I made to, and they were recommended by town council in terms of the central business district, highway business district, and the limited manufacturing district. Let me just get that for reference, what I'm saying. So for the central business district example, so what the existing language is in terms of the description for the CBDs. The purpose of this district is to provide for a center of business activity accessible by pedestrian travel, to provide a center for municipal and cultural activities, and to act as a landmark and symbol of the town. Town council and I agree, and I included the change in the marked up version. It's not, what is the symbol of the town? It's kind of again, when it's subjective, it kind of isn't really, it leads its way to being, misinterpreted. So what I changed it to is the purpose of this district is to provide for a center of business activity accessible by pedestrian travel, high density residential development, in close proximity to public transit, and to encourage smaller scale personal services typical of a vibrant town center such as banks, restaurants, and small scale retail.
That's good. I think that's a-
Yeah, and that was that.
Better.
That's
yeah.
mostly her language. That's her
Yeah.
language. I'm just repeating it. The highway business district language. So the existing language for highway business district, the description is: the purpose of this district is to provide for retail, office, research and development, assembly and manufacturing uses, and all accessory uses related to said uses consistent with uses along a major regional highway and all related accessory uses. That's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Changed it to the purpose of this district is to provide for a larger scale retail, office, research and development, and other personal services such as restaurants and hotels. I don't know if that wants to be expanded or looked on that, but kind of keeping it more or less as a
Simplification.
Just
Do
as-
we need to keep something about major regional highway or something? Because what's defined as the highway? That was the issue.
well. It's just how the zoning district's defined.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but
Yeah.
do we define Route 27 is a highway, you define 1A as a highway.
Well, we don't need to, it's how it's described on the zoning map. So the zoning map, where the highway business district is, that's how this district would be defined as.
So really, the town can define anywhere it wants to as being a highway district, if it wants to put it on the zoning map.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't put the highway business district in the downtown.
Right.
But with that also, beyond the actual description, there's also just the dimensional regulations that go along with that, the use regulations that go along with that. I think a description does the service of, giving you a basic understanding of what goes in that location or
Right.
what kind of fits the makeup of that location. For example, like if you were, someone was going to get a special permit in the highway business district for a certain use, and the zoning board or planning board, wherever the special permit authority is, they may look to reference how you would describe as the highway business district. And so, we may define the use as needing a special permit, but they may look at it and be like, they could reference that description, like, does that really fit of how we want a highway business district to look?
Mhm.
It's kind of more or less something that you include, but it's not, it's not the one measure of how you would allow for certain uses in that district or regulate that district. It's just,
Yeah, because some of the lots can, like a highway business district goes off of Route 1 down Coney. When Rojo's done their car wash on Route 1, Fillmore at the back of it, for the AQVs back there, portions of that is actually highway business, even though you don't know it's back there unless you drive down there. So it is called highway business, but some of it's not actually directly abutting on it. So it is that we don't have much of it either, because it jumps back between Sharon
Yeah,
and those.
Yeah.
Foxborough,
Yeah,
that's
jumps all
crazy.
over. yeah.
Can't tell whose town it is.
No. So so some of it, it is on a major highway, but some of it's on one of the side streets. So the good thing is we don't define the streets as setting our zoning. The highway business district, we go with the districts, luckily,
Yeah.
because again, some of it's back off it, like say again off of Pine Street, off of Coney. Like Coney's a bigger road, but Pine Street's just like that. If you go down Pine, as you know, if you go to Pine Street to Sharon, that is a skinny little road.
On that side, yeah.
Yeah.
so, I mean, the other one that I did modify based upon town council's recommendation was limited manufacturing. Currently, it's described as the purpose of this district is to provide an area for low-density wholesale and unobtrusive manufacturing uses. Her recommendation was to change it to the purpose of this district is to provide an area for manufacturing uses that do not generate noxious fumes, gases, odors, excessive noise, and the like. I believe the reasoning of that was to try to, I guess, better define
Yeah.
what we would see as limited manufacturing. So a manufacturing use would be much more intensive, whereas a limited manufacturing use, you want to not just say it's less intensive, you want to say that it does not
Is noise
include.
one of the things you just mentioned?
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm thinking of the one on School Street.
Yeah.
Well,
That
that
was
was
the one that raised a lot of issues recently. You want to word it such that something like that can't be put back in, or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I think they're trying to define it, because that was the KW Steel incident,
And they ended up doing more things there than we
and our
thought.
limited manufacturing and our industrial are very, very similar. There was not much. I think it was like one or two words completely different. That was it.
Mm.
And that's where that case kind of, like, we did go and shut them down, but they appealed it, and they were looking like they were going to win, and then they decided to move out. That, again, that's another unique kind of spot zoned industrial, like weird
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of spots in
Yeah.
town still, everywhere, yeah.
So I think that's why she's probably trying to define it a bit better, because they
Yep.
were so close to each other.
Right, to differentiate the different ones.
Yeah, so it gives
it's
us
clear
more-
It's this or that, not maybe this and that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Gives the town a bit
Good point.
more protection against it. Because right now, if you were to appeal one or the other, it's a very thin line you're playing with. So I think it's a good one to differentiate that way.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that too in terms of you also need to add a definition. We don't have it defined. I don't think
No, we
actually
don't have a very good
definition.
one, no.
So that whole definition section as well is something that I think, is that part of this process right now? I think we want to save that to the end or whatnot, but that needs to be updated as well.
So for that one, the limited manufacturing,
Yep.
I get that it's coming, recommendation from an attorney, but
Yep.
that one also seems really subject to, interpretation.
Yeah.
I can just imagine an applicant would be like, well, wow, we don't have excessive noise.
Oh yeah, how do you
Oh, the
define
smells
excessive
aren't
noise?
that bad, so I get the point, but I wonder if we could make it more specific, or
No,
are
that's-
there other language, phrases that would be more,
So that
better for
does
the
need to
town?
be better, but we got to play with, say, the general bylaws as well, because
Yeah,
if you say, because our bylaw for noise right now and the general bylaws is, it says whatever you consider irritating within 150 feet.
okay.
So I guarantee
What's
everybody,
irritating?
depends who, like, there's 6 people here, seven
Depends
people.
on what I did the last hour.
Yeah, I'm a lot less sensitive.
That was what you could hear 300 feet away, right?
No, so it's anything that's irritating within 150 feet, and it's only, and here's the kicker, it's only in residential areas.
Right.
It doesn't apply to business areas.
Right.
So that's, because
that
people
would
get that
be-
too, why is it in business areas? And you're like, well, if you have a 24-hour factory, the centre of town is all business. You can't say, well, after 8 o'clock you can't make
Can I
noise.
forbid all the leaf blowers around my house?
Yeah. So that's where
The
it,
ones that wanna wake me up?
that's where we kind of mix
Yeah.
zoning
I
code
mean, if there's-
into bylaws.
Like decibel numbers or some
Yeah,
measurable,
Yeah.
stats that we
Yeah.
can point to, I'd prefer that than just excessive or.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's what.
But I know that's hard, but
no,
I read that and I can
Yeah.
just imagine the fights happening.
yeah, because that's
From an
we've been
applicant.
called up multiple times for noise between neighbours,
Right,
and that's it again. You're blaring country music.
right,
Phil has got rock and roll going.
yeah,
John has Metallic in the corner going, you all like your music, how do I pick which one is wrong?
Yeah.
You can. Decibel level, you can.
right.
So a lot of towns do have decibel levels, we don't, and I've said to people before, our general bylaw on the noise ordinance has 0 teeth.
Yeah,
It's very hard to enforce, so
That's
decibel
what-
level would be
You
a
can't
good.
do it after this time, and you can't do it before this.
Yeah, so like,
Right.
literally it says between 7 a.m. in the morning and 8 p.m. at night. But that's either tied in with you doing construction work or in residential area. It's not tied into commercial area. Because a truck delivering to, say, CVS at 4 in the morning,
Yeah.
or take the quarry on West Street.
mhm,
They do, their cement trucks leave like at 4 in the morning because they're delivering for main roads to do nighttime work.
yeah,
So business districts, it doesn't, and central anything that's not residential, it doesn't apply to. So that's the tough one.
This is just something not to kind of, I mean, this is, we just
Yeah.
go and talk, we have so much, when we look at it, but, so I wanna just bring up, we don't have a definition currently
No.
for limited manufacturing, and this is our only definition for manufacturing. Heavier light industry, manufacturing, assembly of a product, assembly, processing, fabrication, assembly, treatment, packaging, and allowed accessory uses. I wanted to just
Really
bring up,
good,
and
yeah.
again, only because I'm familiar with it, this is the definition within Norwood for, and this is excessive a little bit, but you go into it, and a lot of this language is old in
Yeah.
this glue manufacturing.
Foul.
But there is at least a definition in terms of like light manufacturing, and
Mhm.
I think that's trying to create the distinction between, it's assembly. Well, what is assembly in terms of intensive and what's limited? I think not to overthink it right now, but that whole definition section,
We
it
could
just needs to
jump,
be,
yeah.
it could be its own, thing
Yeah.
entirely.
I mean, if we're going through the trouble of updating it,
Yeah.
and we see that something is not as strong as it could be, if we have a chance,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
make it stronger.
So I thought that the noise, odor, and vibration and stuff, I thought that was everywhere through the town, that you couldn't affect a neighbor or surrounding ones. I thought that was everywhere, so why couldn't we make that everywhere? And then instead of 150 feet, I think it should be the property line. Right?
So,
So
I
then you
go,
could take your decibel reader or.
Well, that's what it is, a
Or your
decibel.
light
Yeah.
reader, and then
Like-
go right to the property line, cause
Like
you can't spill.
the regulations for light.
Right,
Like
right,
the
so
light
why
has
can't
to
you have-
end at the property line.
Yeah. So again, you'd have to look between the decibel level. That's because that's an easy to measure and force. Property line can have its ups and downs because if you live within your house is here and you're here and you got 20 feet, you're at the minimum setback, and you're going property line. If I live, say, on a pork chop lot where my house is way back, but I just don't like you, and I might drive and I can hear your, say, pool equipment moving, and I go, hey, that's close to the property line, even though it's 200 feet from your house.
Right.
But I'm at your front gate with a decibel level going, yeah, he's breaking it and move, even though you'd never hear it at your house. We got to find that balance. So you got to find a balance. That's the tail. Is it property line, or you could say property line or a structure within 150 feet. So if you're 200 feet away and you're going, well, the decibel level is 65, you're like, you're over 200 feet away, you're not even going to hear it. So you can mix the two of them,
So
property line
you'd be
or a
comparing
structure.
The structure to the source of the sound.
Yeah, because again, if your house is set way back in, but their stuff is set to the front of their house, like if you're sitting in your house, you'll never hear it because it's 300 feet away.
Yeah.
But if we just say property line,
Yeah.
then I go all around your property and do it wherever's on the property line. But if we say property line or within 200 feet of your structure, mix the two of them together,
Okay.
that could make it
Yeah.
stronger for us.
Because, Patrick, I don't know what the Nord language is, but I
Yeah.
had to go on the roof of the Gallup building with one of the building inspectors because
Yeah.
one of the neighbors was complaining that he thought one of the air purifier fans was making too much noise. Nobody else heard it, but this guy did, and he complained.
Yeah.
We had to go up there and try to figure out which unit it was, and then go to the property line and
Yeah.
measure it, you know? So I don't know what their
I think there's
definition is, but I think it sounds a lot more strict than what we have.
Do you measure it with scientifically for
Yeah,
decibels?
yeah,
decibel
yeah,
level.
yeah.
I've done
What do
it
you
for
call
other
it?
towns. The meter, the decimal meter. I've done it in other towns. I believe Norwood is residential is 55 at night time, 65 commercial, and then if you're doing work, it increases 10 decibel levels for work going on. But at night time, it does drop back down to. So like, just give me an idea. Everybody talking here, roughly about 70 decibels is what you're looking at. So it's kind of that thing is if I'm talking on your property line, but your house is 200 feet away, you're not going to hear me. So
John raises a good question about the leaf blowers. You get somebody having a yard with 2 or 3 leaf blowers going at once. A lot of towns are enacting bylaws regarding. So that's a tough one, I know.
That's a tough one
Yeah,
because if you
yeah.
enact something that say either cuts them out or makes them go electric, then we have to replace everything in the DPW. So they can't even do Parks and Rec. They can't do the grid.
Yeah.
All their machinery, we're going to cost that. So that's where you got to.
Yeah. No, I
It
recognize
gets tricky.
that.
Put a
That's what,
muffler on it.
yeah.
But I have been there outside in my yard where I had to come in.
Yeah, but that's something.
Well,
I get.
Luckily, it's not a long time usually, but yeah.
Now they get the big rider, like my son's got that, and
Mine.
everybody else is getting now, and that thing sounds like a jet engine. It's
Yeah.
like- But, you know what, it's only like a third the time.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it gets the yard done so much faster.
That's right.
Yeah, that's something we can come back to, like, because we'll need to mix it in with, again, that's where there's a crossover between zoning and general
Yeah.
bylaws.
Yeah.
Um,
Not to kind of circle back,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, another thing that wasn't referenced by Carolyn that I did make, and I think John, you may have made a comment last time about it, was just the setup right of this section within 4.1. You know, obviously, you know, there's simple title. The way it's written and the way it's described isn't really clear, so separating it that way is just more or less just a minor tweak. I don't know if anyone has any comments or thoughts of that. That way it's just, all right, that is the
Cleaner.
symbol, that is the subtitle, and then breaking it up.
Agree.
So,
I like
minor, but I mean, I think it's one thing that, you know, you brought up and we didn't think about in the zoning diagnostic, so.
It's readability is what it is.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if we're in that, well, yeah.
Okay,
We
yeah.
haven't decided on East Walpole yet, so yeah.
yeah.
It's too soon to adjust.
So, before moving on to, I think I have a question for 4.4. 4.2, I don't know if anyone has taken a look or thought about in terms of these descriptions, if we want to take a closer look, or if they're kind of, we're okay with them right now for the other ones that weren't noted by town council, but, that was one of my questions for you. But,
like, no, I think our descriptions in the highway and element of manufacturing, like, they're a good description.
Yep.
And then, as I said, we want to try and get something in front because the two main things are the flood and the ADU.
Yeah.
We can get these put through as a chunk, then we can come back around and put better definitions into our definitions on the next time around.
Yep.
And we can fine tune the limit of manufacturing and industrial to back this up. Like, this gives us an idea of where to head,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can get the definitions even more stringent.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of things are self-defining. So for example, when you say general residence B, the
Mhm.
primary purpose of this district is to provide an area for medium density. It by itself defines what medium density is, because how do you define those things other than, having an example, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So really briefly on 4.3, some of the changes, just factoring in from town council, adding the correct dates for both the zoning map itself based upon when the last amendment was, which I might want to talk to her about that just only because we find ourselves in the same situation where when we update the zoning map, now we got to go back and update. We got to go back and update that. Maybe that's not a bad thing, but in general, it creates a situation where you could have updating every single time. So,
Well, changing the zoning map doesn't occur very often.
Correct.
but so that's
One of the dates, Patrick, I did want to ask town council,
Yeah.
if you can now, is there's some sections of our zoning that says prior to zoning creation 1926, which is unique.
1956.
Well, 56 estate, Walpole said 1926. And if you look at the zoning book from 1926, which I actually have a few copies in my office, it's actually a building code book. It's not a zoning book. It tells you how to build your house. But it's called zoning, and we do in one or two of our sections reference prior to our zoning of 1926, which there not really is. And most case law at state level and the Mass General Law all reference 1956, and most of the cases come from then. So I was just going to reach out to see if she thinks taken out, because prior to 1926, there is one in chapter 6 on if you have a non-conformity and you can prove was prior to our zoning 1926, you get to keep it. The odds of you finding documents back then. And again, if someone did
what
appeal,
section is that?
I believe it's chapter 6.
Well, not conforming to
Do
changing that.
Control F and type in that.
Yeah. Well, this was
It should jump up. There.
25. That's why.
It's even worse. 25.
Yeah. So this is.
So, yeah. So that's just one, because we say 925, but if someone appealed and
This is a
actually
non-conform. Okay, so
non-conformity.
this is another thing. I know we got so much. Section 9 itself, I had town council do that, and I think I sent that out to everyone
Yeah.
else. Just because, again, it's
a big
a lot of it is mostly trying to be compliant with
Yeah.
case law.
Tricky, yeah.
That might be a lot to kind of go over right now today,
Yeah.
but just in general, yeah, I think this
just
is
to
something
say, no, if you
may
can
have
ask her
covered.
about it, because again, we're going with a book that was basically a building code book from 925. If anybody appeals us and takes us to court, most cases define 56 as the start of zoning, so they'd probably win in the long run. So is it easier for her to catch back up and state 56 as the
So she removed all of that.
yeah?
So that might be answering your question. Yeah. So this is section 9 that I had town council just work on entirely. All of this language regarding 1925, she seems to have removed. I know. Maybe we have to save that for a different discussion,
Yeah.
just because
Yeah,
we got a
it's
lot to
gonna
kind of
be
cover.
a lot.
And so 4.3 again, adding the dates, also included the location for the stadium overlay, which wasn't defined there.
Yeah.
I believe we have. Is it East Walpole in here? Well, when we answer the question on the East Walpole parking district, that may also need to be put into the locations. With 4.4, rules for interpretation of district boundaries. So I did have a question. So town council had, her language was, I further recommend revising the organization and text of paragraph A through G to distinguish the rules that apply only to interpreting the boundaries shown on the zoning district map from the rules that apply to interpreting the overlay district boundaries, E and F. And add provisions for the solar overlay and the stadium event parking overlay district. So trying to take a closer look at 4.4, so it's not, so rules for interpreting the district boundaries. Let's see if I have it set up a little bit so far. So A through H I added. So my first comment is for under C. So the boundary line is shown, okay, so let me just back up a little bit. A through E have to do more or less with the zoning map itself, and then we get into F, H.
So you've inserted E there into the existing one.
Building commissioner. Sorry, I'm just trying to.
You comfortable with the final thing on that,
What was it?
Jim?
Yeah.
E?
So I guess my comment here is for both under C. So where a boundary line is shown
Dart at the wall.
outside the lines of a street, railroad, or utility transmission line approximately parallel thereto, such boundary line shall be deemed parallel to the center line thereof. The language and where a figure is placed upon a map between such boundary line and the street, railroad, and utility transmission line indicates the distance in feet of such boundary line from such center line measured to the right angle thereto unless otherwise designated. I have no idea what that means. So I recommended just removing that. I didn't really notice that within other towns, and so I just, I don't know if Jim got any comments on that. So that's 4.4C.
Yes, and the 90 degrees going on that is just, it's the same as if you're doing lot lines. If you have a curved lot line,
Yeah.
or you have a lot line going off at a 45 degrees,
Yep.
and your house is beside it, basically skew ways to it, you don't measure from the house back, so you measure 90 degrees off of all. So I think the part at the bottom on the angle there
Yeah.
too is just saying if you have a, say, a railway track, and the track is curving, and
Okay.
you're measuring from that, your angle comes off of that line at 90 degrees. So if you have a circle, you could have 57 lines, but if your train turns at 90 degrees, it's just saying any of these districts that you're measuring from, you measure off, same as a standard lot line.
Yeah.
You have to come 90 degrees from the lot line, not the building.
Mm.
Um,
So you,
doesn't affect us.
So they're saying the boundary line, if you can't actually distinguish what it is, it's gonna be to the center of the railroad tracks, like the railroad line,
yeah.
or the center of the high tension lines, that like the transmission lines, is that what they're actually saying right there in C?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that what's throwing me off is the whole language and where a figure is placed. Like what,
The what?
I feel like we're covering that kind of within the first section, unless I'm wrong. And where a figure is placed upon the map between such boundary line.
Yeah, it's just like you.
So they're just saying, I think if you're finding the district as being so many feet
Yeah.
from Main Street,
Okay.
it's measured at a 90-degree angle perpendicular to Main Street.
Mhm.
That's how you figure that distance.
Okay.
So
So,
they-
that's like that's the figure. I mean,
Yeah, it's saying, okay, it says 90 feet or whatever, and it's measured perpendicular to your street
Yeah.
or your railroad or whatever you're
Mhm.
paralleling to.
Okay.
So that line is parallel this distance away from Main Street.
Yeah, because if you're doing a split zoning line,
Yeah.
like we have our zoning map.
Yeah.
But if you go on, so there's a property behind Cumberland Farms on Washington Street.
Yeah.
The gentleman there has probably a third of his property split. You can zoom in on it, but it's hard to define exactly where it is. So this is kind of, if there's a feature you can lock onto a road, power line, something,
Okay.
you can get onto it. The gentleman who done they asked for the extra spaces up on 1A Auto.
Yeah. Yep.
His business district is actually in the neighbour's back half his property.
Yeah.
His surveyor had terrible trouble trying to find where that line split. Because we have a zoning map and you have to zoom in. When you zoom in, it's just a black line. When you zoom in close enough, that black line could be 10 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've taken this as just saying that if you can find the railroad, a street, something that's definitive,
Okay.
to go 90, again, to do the same as a property line, you go 90 degrees off it.
Do we know when the current zoning map was created, or the beginnings of when it was created? I don't know, is there some place we can go back to and see how they define the outlines of the districts, I'm wondering.
So I don't
Yeah.
know the last time I changed. 'Cause
In
I-
terms of the, well, I mean, I think it was what, 07, 08 when they changed some of the sections
Yeah.
significantly,
Yeah.
but
I was going back to the beginning when
Yeah.
they.
I have a
first-
map from, I have a map I can send you from 1947, and they changed the zoning map in 1956, and they went literally from coloured in areas, like if you had a sloped line on it, you were one district, if you
Yeah.
were blacked out, you were business.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
think I remember seeing.
So I have a map in my office of that I can send you that, in 56 is when they changed it, and rewrote most of the areas.
Yeah, I'm wondering when they rewrote it, whether they actually defined them, or if they just did it on a map, whether they actually said paralleling, or running down Washington Street and then turning left on Peach Street and.
Yeah, I think it
something
also
like
went
that or
in.
whatever, but I don't know.
Yeah, in 56 it did seem to follow property lines, but back in 56 you had big farmland in this town, you had big factories, you had big lots that have been chopped up,
Yeah.
so all of a sudden that line's appearing in the middle of a lot now, so that's what makes it tricky.
Ah.
So Jim, in your opinion then, do you think this C is sufficient? Or can we make it better or clearer, or do you think it's,
I think it has to be clearer myself,
Yeah.
because the center line, how far are you gonna go parallel to the center line? Are you gonna go to the property line? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't say
Yeah, well, I
how
mean-
far, so,
I'm with Pat, I don't quite follow it, but
Yeah,
if it's
so-
clear to a building commissioner, then maybe we're
Yeah,
okay,
it's,
but.
it is weird, so again, it's one of those things, because we go off of, say, setbacks, and some of ours don't go from property lines, it goes from district boundary lines.
Okay,
So this is what this is relating to. Where's the district boundary line if it lands in the middle of someone's property? And you don't have a definitive, he could move it 4 or 5 feet left or right,
yeah,
which could make it good for the developer, make it
Right.
bad for the neighbour, or
Right.
vice versa.
so how do we
This
fix
is-
it?
You'd have to get a whole new map redrawn with, again, this is kind of, that section C is just saying from, if you're near a street, railway tracks, utility, if there's something that's permanent fixture that you can kind of say, well, it goes kind of, like if your line on the map goes down and this is a pole, but the line goes through both sides, you can lock onto a definitive or target and go, yeah, off of this go 90 degrees.
So if we
We
modify the
could
word
clean it up
figure
slightly.
to say like permanent or natural feature, is that better or is still?
Well, I think they're looking at a line on the map, they wanna find a line on the map and use that as a guideline for where their boundary line is. A single telephone pole or a
Yeah.
static rock post isn't gonna
Yeah.
provide that.
Yeah,
A stream,
90 degrees.
They want
and-
something that's not
so if you're
an
not,
item, they want a length.
Yeah, so
basically.
if you're not sure where the line is, how far are you
Sure.
gonna measure out the center line? to?
Right, well,
That's my
Well,
no,
question.
that's the thing,
Has to be
yes, they need
perpendicular.
to, they
So-
need to really identify how far.
Perpendicularly, but still you gotta get a distance from
You
the.
still need
Yeah.
that distance.
Yeah.
Right, so how do you determine that?
That's
It's-
the,
it's
so,
that perpendicular line though, is the.
well, so that's for
The
setbacks.
perpendicular line should be used to indicate how far away it is.
Yeah, so if you
But
took
I'm not sure if that's
properties,
actually,
like we have a lot of properties now,
available.
but if you had the district zoning line going down the middle, right in some of our maps, and you zoom in on it, if there wasn't a railway track, in this case, they're saying power lines, then you could lock onto that. So say if you were down on Coolridge, Coolridge Street has the tracks run parallel the whole way down, you could kind of use that. But in something like this, you have no definitive,
I
so,
think,
honestly,
That's-
I just think there needs to be an easier way of saying
Yeah.
it.
it can be
think I'm
cleaned
reading
up.
that.
maybe
Yeah.
there needs to be an
you
example
need to say that, but
to
maybe
show
we
an
can say it
example
better.
of how it's
Yes.
applied.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can send you like a few districts lines that you kind of go on. Is it there? Is it 4 feet, 5 feet? Again, I said the gentleman in 1A, I think his engineer spent 3 months trying to get, and he gave it as 10 foot plus or minus because he couldn't definitively say, because it was just a line on the map that probably wasn't property lines that have vanished from years and years ago. But that's all that
Can you
is.
propose language, Jim? To us?
Yeah, I can work with Patrick and get something.
I think you would be, it'd be better for you, so you know
Well,
what you need to
Yeah.
It's
define it.
partly why
Yeah.
I added this E.
Truly strong.
But honestly, I didn't just add that for the sake of adding it when I was just kind of looking at a few other neighboring towns,
Yeah.
it does pop up occasionally. I
Right.
think you have that situation where you're like,
Yeah.
when all else fails, building commissioner's the final say,
Yeah.
honestly, and
I
that's
already
kind
asked him if he was
Jim.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Jim, on the zone boundaries, do they tend to run one side of the street, or do they run down the middle of the street? Are they particularly set up so that it's only, the boundary line for the lot is on one side of the street?
So
not the
most
center
of it,
line?
it goes, or like say, South Street has an LM with RB around it. It runs down the property line, it follows the property line, because that hasn't changed in a while. Some of the district zonings actually don't follow anything. I think they originally did, and then the land was chopped up or bought up and combined, and now you have a line down the middle of it. So they usually follow the road, like, not so much the road, because you could be on both sides of the road. It does follow property lines to try and get it as a zone. But we do have some that have changed, but the,
Do you have issue, probably is an issue, right? You have one zone on one side of the street, one zone on the other side of the street. What's the street? That's probably not an
So-
issue.
No, that's not an issue, because again, your property line's starting, because it's kind of like a private road. Everybody knows you want halfway to the private road, but if you're doing your frontage, it's the side of the road, your properties, you can't include
Right.
that portion. So most of the zones, the road doesn't matter. It's when the back of the district line could be again. I'm trying to think of ones off my head that we have dealt with. We have dealt with some a lady off of Kenrick Street, her property split and clean in half. There was no defining reason for it, but it goes through land. The front half is RB, the back half is GR. So she was moving her property, saying, well, if I go back here, I can build bigger. If I keep forward, I go smaller. So she was deciding which side of the line to jump on.
Well, there are restrictions, but-
So I live on
we have to
Pemberton
do the
Street.
more restrictive
Yeah.
one, yeah.
And when we moved down to our house, the front half was general residence, the second half was general residence B, and then they rezoned everything general residence B.
Yeah,
But up to that time, we were half and half.
yeah. So
Which
we have a small bit of
is kind of
zoning
a-
in there
Yeah.
where, like, if you're 80% on one side and
Yeah,
20% on the other, you get to pick.
Which one?
You can take
Pick
the
the
80% and
80%.
push it over.
Yeah.
If you're split,
So,
you can go with the more stringent.
so that's
Yeah.
crossing over to the next discussion,
Yeah.
but before we get there,
We can clean
Um,
that up with all.
I think everything else is kind of self-explanatory. We're gonna get into split boundary lots, but section H, depending on how we kind of want to do this, we could either, instead of having split boundary lots its own section, we can include it within this portion, which is for the purpose of interpretation of district boundaries. So split boundaries seems to be separated. You could also just include it within, I don't know why it's separated,
Just
I'm
have
gonna call it out.
H1, H2, you mean, kind of like that?
Something like that, depending on how we want the split boundary bylaw to look. If we want to keep it separate, then I would just remove H, because it doesn't make sense to say, like, split boundaries are at the next section. Yeah, cool. So, depending on how I think this next discussion is gonna go, we can either remove that portion or
Yeah. I see
expand
your
on
point,
move split
yeah.
boundaries up. So, town council, just to go back to her,
Well,
her
again,
comments.
the comments for split boundary lots is how to interpret it, which really
Yeah.
does fall into 4.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think the thought was, like, why don't we just include it as one rather than having another subsection?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Right?
Because the whole thing is, it's
You could
how do
make
you
it-
interpret it, and
Yep.
4 is how do you interpret boundaries, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, including it into 4, getting rid of.
Get rid of
maybe
H.
Well, keeping H, but just maybe H1,
Get rid of split
H2 or
Point,
something.
get rid of 5, basically make it H.
Yeah.
okay.
Did she give us some suggestion on how to change
split
the
boundaries?
boundaries?
So this is kind of where that's why I made a document about just a few different examples. So I think we're agreeing split boundary lots,
Yep.
include it within the description rather than having it separated.
That's fine.
So which
Four.
lot of Main Street were you saying
I
know
liked
the-
your,
So-
the Canton,
The car
Westwood
dealership.
Yeah.
1A,
kind of definitions,
car
so-
dealership 1A down
Ah,
there.
early, yeah, that
William
seems to
Street,
be a common
across from
thread.
Clef
Yeah.
Court.
That
So-
seemed to me to
This is gonna
be.
be hard to hear.
Yeah, guys. So
Just tell me.
her language, her recommendation really, and I mean, is, sorry, 1 second. The language used in this subsection is cumbersome and ambiguous. The town may wish to revisit the rules for split lots and clarify the requirements. So in doing this, I just kind of took a look at our neighbors and included their interpretation. So currently, split boundary lots, our bylaw reads as follows. For lots that are divided by one or more underlying district zoning boundary lines, excluding overlay districts, the following shall apply. In the portion of a lot that in the zoning district of highest restrictiveness contains at least 80% of the required minimum lot area for said zoning district, when use is permitted in said zoning district shall be allowed for the entire lot area upon special permit from the Board of Appeals. All applicable dimensional requirements shall be calculated as though the lot were entirely within said district. B. Uses permitted in the zoning district of lesser restrictiveness shall be permitted only upon the portion of the lot contained within such district. Such portion of the lot shall conform to all applicable dimensional requirements of said zoning district, and no other portion of the lot may be used to calculate such. And I was just kind of reading, and everyone has their kind of may want to just read themselves and kind of absorb that, but I have just a few different examples. I don't know if anyone had a second to kind of look this over, and if you mentioned you looked at it.
I liked the Westwood,
yeah.
a couple of things. One is that it's very clear.
It's to the point.
You know, and second, doesn't require a special permit. It's a very, and it seemed fair that if you could go 50 feet or whatever feet you want to set into the more restrictive to build under the less restrictive. So that kind of felt flexible to the owner of how they might use their land.
Yeah.
So that was my.
No, that's it. I noticed the same thing with Foxborough too. Just looking underneath it, a lot of them had kind of Norfolk as well. Have that almost like you can tell they kind of just copied from each other. It has that common theme. Jim, particularly, have you kind of?
Yeah, no, I like the same to Phil's point. I like the Westwood one where, because again, our zoning says, as you said there, 80% of your lot has to be in one zone.
Yep.
And 20% in the other zone, and then you can go to the Board of Appeals to get a special permit to use it into 20. But if you're not exactly 80-20, your lot's split in half. Right. So even if you're at 75%,
what do you do?
You're caught, because if you have a house on, say, we have a gentleman on Common Street, he has 70% of his house is on RB, and because Cumberland Farms there is a business district, that district boundary line is actually on his property. So he's 30% there, so he wants to build his house out, but he's not allowed because you can't do residential in the first floor in business. And that 70-30 does not give him a route. You have to go for a variance, and that's a use variance which you won't never get.
Right.
So I do like that if you're stuck in that way, you can carry it into it. Like, you're not taking over all that space, but you get at least 50 foot into it to get your use into it.
Yeah.
You build your house.
Yeah.
Is that enough, 50 feet, to be beneficial?
I think that's pretty significant.
Oh,
I
I would
think-
say, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to make it that you'll get the, say, you can go into the setbacks, you can use so again, I'll use the one I'm dealing with right now. He has a house, his setback in RB, say, is 15 feet.
Yeah.
But if he goes with the business setback, he can go down to 10 feet.
Right.
So he get even closer with a use that technically is not allowed there.
Yeah.
So if we give him the 50 feet, that way too, but it also gives you, I would add to it maybe the 50 feet in, but you also take the setbacks,
Yeah, the setbacks.
of what zone you act, the RA zone or RB zone. So
Right.
you're basically transferring the zoning into there up to 50 feet with the house and everything. So I think that's a good one, given the dimension. Because again, we have two options, but it's either you're 80% 20
Right.
or that's it.
Right. Yeah, we should provide flexibility and minimize special
Yeah,
50
permits.
feet seems to be in several of the towns, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming
Okay.
that they have experience and,
So,
you know, it's
slow
working
down
for
or
them.
up?
That's good, yeah.
That may be a bad assumption, but
So Foxborough uses 30.
Yeah. that seems
Sharon's
small. to me.
30. I think Norfolk is 50.
Yeah.
So,
Westwood is 50.
yeah.
Like if we could write something like that going, up to 50 feet, as long as you keep the setbacks of the underlying zoning that you're using. So
Right.
if you're RA and you go into
I
a
like that.
setback,
Yeah.
then you're keeping the 25-foot setback. So we can add them two together. So we're giving you the permission to go in there with something you're not allowed,
Right.
but you're going to match the other side.
Right.
So
You
he-
don't
he can
get
go
to
in
violate
50
the other
feet,
setbacks.
As long as he maintains the 25.
25 that is
Yeah.
in is the left side of his house.
I think
Is.
that's
So
reasonable.
I keep
yeah.
thinking back to the building on Main Street,
Yep.
John something or other, with the condos, you got
Oh,
next to the Dunkin'
Marini.
Donuts.
Oh,
John
Marini's, yeah.
Marini. And when we approved that, he has a split lot there. And he didn't have enough commercial to get his buffer to the residential. So he was using the residential as the buffer.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to make a point that he could not build a house on that back lot because now he needed that a residential area on the front to get his area or whatever, and he was taking away the buffer.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I know he came back to try to build a house, I don't know whatever happened to that,
He
but,
done a subdivision.
Planning board, yeah.
He done a
It got
subdivision.
approved.
yeah.
I don't know where it sits though.
Yeah.
That's a
So
whole
that's
nother problem.
yeah. So,
So-
the buffer zone is a tricky one because, again, to go back to the gentleman on the car on 1A there across from Clefco Isle,
Yeah,
his 26-foot buffer doesn't exist because the business line is actually in on the residential side. So 26 feet actually comes to his fence anyway. So his buffer is his property line. So that's where that kind of can be beneficial to you.
okay.
To that degree, where it could either kill you or in his case it was beneficial, means he has no setback. Actually the latest one that we've done in town is High Plain Street, the 173 High Plain Street. They have a 26 buffer on the right hand side, they have a 26-foot buffer on the back of it, but on the left hand side they have no buffer because that house to the left
It's also business.
is split down the middle with the business
Right.
district. So his buffer is literally the fence because he's going from the district boundary line, not the property line.
Cause, I think it was, Donnell Murphy's on Route 1. He had the business where he did the mall and where the Kentucky Fried Chicken was, but behind him was another strip of, it was only like 5 or 10 feet wide, and there was a strip between his property and the residential on the back. So he did not have to, the way the zoning was at the time, he did not have to have the 40-foot buffer because he was abutting another business.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we
Even though it was.
I think we changed that wording that it had to be a 40-foot buffer from the residential property line to
Yeah.
come back. I think that change was put in there, but
You know, there's change put in, but it still goes off, I believe, I could be wrong, but it does go off of district boundary lines on splits between that. So I do like, to Phil's point and to your point, I do like the kind of Westwood one with the 50 feet.
Yeah.
If we can write something with the 50 feet, you're allowed
Yeah.
into it as long as you keep the setbacks of what the zoning you're using. So if you're in
More
rural
restrictive.
and you can't go more restrictive because you could be going into a
No, you're saying the setbacks of the more restrictive.
not even more restrictive, match
Well,
what you're, so if you're
what
taking
you're
a
using.
residential, when
Okay.
you're
whatever
using.
zoning he
Okay.
was using,
Yeah, okay.
he
Yeah.
had to use it, so.
Do we need to keep the phrase about the frontage?
I think-
What
well,
Westwood has?
Westwood has.
Well, Foxborough's, that sounds wrong. I think that Foxborough's is a little bit different and it doesn't
Yeah.
need to write. Westwood's at least is saying something, but I think the count one we have here is a little bit off, so section B.
I don't know why you
is-
would require frontage.
Well, I think they basically don't want you to be able to build something too big if you
Probably
don't
to
have
make
the
sure it's a-
frontage of something that would normally have been able to go there. If you're building a house with a lot that's rural, partly rural, you have to show that you have 200 feet of frontage or something.
But I think you wanna make sure it's a conforming lot, right? You don't wanna make the lot non-conforming,
Well,
right?
not necessarily. I think they said street frontages because they don't want a house that's behind something, and then you go push it further into a business and push the house into somewhere or you make it even more non-conforming because you're coming through either a giant drive, like you're going through the commercial to get to your house. So you're kind of like picked out there. They kind of want you fronting on the street to allow you to do it, which most of our properties do front on. It's very rare for you to get one that's like isolated.
Yeah. So I mean, I just to kind of.
Well,
really-
the frontage just means like your lot should have frontage, like why do we need to say that?
Well, it's saying it has
Well,
to be on
a lot can have
has to be on the
frontage,
less restricted
but you can
district.
have,
So if your frontage was on the more restricted district,
Yeah,
the way I interpret it,
then
you can't come into the.
you can't, oh, okay.
I think that's what
Okay,
they're,
okay,
what they're
alright, so
saying, whether
that's
it's good or
fine.
bad
Yeah,
is
it
Seems
different.
to be
Yeah.
a mention of that within all of them too. I
Okay,
just
so that's fine.
Norfolk, Rentham, and Franklin look like they all copied from each other. At least Franklin and Rentham did. And
so
yeah, it's a
some of
slim
the-
down,
Okay, so keep the
simpler version.
frontage and add the setback,
Yeah.
You would have to maintain the
yeah,
proper
that's fine.
setbacks with the zoning.
Yeah, with the
being
frontage.
used,
Yeah,
right?
because you could have, if your main drive was to Phil's Bank was coming in off of a business, your frontage on business is 15 to 25 feet. So you could come forward more that way, so. But I think, yeah, that's a good combination
Alright.
of the 50 feet, the frontage.
And then it makes it very clear to people, and there's no reason for special
Yeah.
permits or going
Yeah.
to the zoning board of appeals or.
And then the other
The other one is Norwood's.
portion, if you
Yeah.
want, I don't know how much, like, how small do you want to go on, say, like we had the 80-20, which is kind of locked it out, but say if I have a home, like we have homes on West Street or in LM, so they don't apply to this, but if you had a house and only 20% of your lot was in the RA and the rest was in business, so you're non-conforming, and then you go, well, I'm going to take the 20% and push it all the way over to get more house. Do we want to go with, like, you can't be, they can't be less than 60%?
No one else seems to have that type
portion.
of detail. I mean, that to say that everyone's better, but I'm just saying.
I would keep it simple.
Can't put
but-
simple.
Yeah.
Well, I think it needs to include, that it must, conform to the district that has.
Yeah, which
the most
Unless you see a
restrictive-
problem,
Yeah.
unless you think there's a
has to be
problem
the
with
most
that, Joe.
restrictive
Hmm?
district.
I said, unless you think
Yeah.
that could cause a problem.
No, I just want to say that.
I would go with the
Um,
expert,
Yeah.
yeah.
It also
But-
allows you to also look at overlays too,
Yeah.
which may come in a few different things.
I was looking at the Nord one, and I noticed the split town line one. Do we have anything like that, Bill? Kim, do you know?
No.
No.
Some towns I did notice did have a split town line. I just included the district. I mean the parcel one, but some
Yeah.
do have one. I'm not sure if it's. I don't know how really it's needed. If it's kind of stating the obvious.
So split towns in different towns is very unique because
Yeah.
we control our town. Some towns put in their zoning that if you're on a split town line,
Yeah.
you abide by our zoning.
Yeah.
But then if you step on their side of the line, they're like, yeah, that's great for your zoning, saying that we're not going to let them do it. So we don't have, so like, we have ours, if you're in Walpole, that's it, even if you have land. So the latest one we done was
Didn't we
the
have something like that recently with two towns involved?
the veterinarian on Route 1.
Oh yeah.
The
There was-
vet-
There was a little piece in Foxborough on
There was,
that
yeah,
one.
they had like
Yeah.
more acres over in Fox,
Yeah.
so the vet on Route 1 there near
Yeah,
Fox Hill.
But they weren't really touching it,
They
that
weren't using
area.
it for-
Yeah.
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a lot of wetlands, but
yeah,
it's kind of way like they had 3 acres in Foxborough and only 1 acre in Walpole.
yeah,
They wanted to combine the two together because then they could make a bigger building because say, well, we've 4 acres of land.
yeah.
And we're like, no, you're in Walpole, you get the 1 acre.
Interesting.
So some towns do, like Norwood do, they kind of say like, yeah, we'll go into the other town, but ours only will say, no, you can't. And that's kind of,
Again, would that be a situation where, yeah, the main, the bulk of the property is within Walpole?
Yeah.
Or like you access the property through Walpole,
Yeah.
so you're just saying that.
and again, if they
Our
want to build,
zoning is the same throughout.
Yeah.
You can't just apply,
yes, if you build a
Sharon's
house
zoning.
that's half
Yeah.
in like Walpole, half in Sharon, Norwood, and Norwood goes, oh yeah, we allow a bigger house in the portion lot. As soon as they cross town lines, we'll go, no, you're going with our zoning. It is a unique one because if you built a house that's split in both sides, we technically have to say, well, that's your side or your rear, whereas your setback is your house is actually in your setback. So you won't be allowed to do that. No, there is 1 or 2 houses in town that are split. So it's a pre-existing thing, but new. So that's probably what that was aiming for. But I don't think we need to do something like that.
No.
I say
So
we'll just.
the two parts that are in split boundary right now,
Mhm.
the two aspects, one is an uneven split, and this is kind of the first part of it, is finding that.
Yep.
Being able to go, is 50 feet, 30 feet? What's the thought on that? I've seen both 50 and 30 in here. I was in most lots,
Well, see,
150 by 150 or something like that.
I would think,
That's
if
an
it's
awful
squeezed
lot.
for
50
space,
feet's an
they're not gonna
awful
end
lot
up going to
of
50 feet anyways, right?
like we could say 50 feet, but if we were transferring the side and rear yard restrictions over with it, so you might have 70 feet to the side, but if you're in, if you're in rural, you have 25 feet of a side yard, so you have to keep that anyway.
Right.
So you might be able to get the full 50 feet, but if you have the land and you're split that much because again, we have it at 80-20, or you do have, you whatever.
80% perhaps excessive.
Yeah. And again, especially with that, you have to hit exactly 80%, which is,
Okay. If, for instance, we're using, we'll use RB in linear manufacturing,
Mhm.
because that's the case where you might want to run into something. RB is 120,
125 foot frontage, 20,000 square foot of land with 15 foot side setbacks.
yeah. So it needs 125 frontage,
Mhm.
and if you have a lot that's, we'll say 200,
Mhm.
and 125 of that is RB and 75 would be, business, whatever. We'd be saying, okay, you have the 125, and you can go 30 feet or 50 feet into the other
Yeah.
one. Okay.
And so do we want to provide an avenue for a special permit if that's not sufficient, or that's it, this is,
Well, I would,
So if you want to go into it more, then I would say, yeah, you're going before one of the boards.
or do we just say like, we're not, it's not.
Wonder,
Enough,
yeah.
enough is enough.
I kind of agree. Yeah, only because
I just wanna close
Yeah.
the loop there.
Yeah.
If we get rid of the
I really-
50, the 80-20 thing, because that's very specific, well, if we make it like this, I think that opens it up pretty near. If you want more, you're kind of getting greedy.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's fine with just
Okay,
that a quick paragraph like that.
50 feet's bigger than my house.
Yeah. And we could do 30, but you know.
applying to the less restricted distance may be considered.
So we had a house a few years back, right on the western Norwood line,
Yep.
and the plumber had to pull a permit for the kitchen and the bathroom with Norwood, and 1.5 bathrooms in Westwood, because it was split down the middle. And actually, we have another building where Analog was, across from McDonald's down there, that's split right in half, and they don't know where to get the building permit. Sometimes they've got it in Norwood, and they should have got it in Westwood.
Yeah.
what a
But
mess.
it's, the building's split in half
Yeah.
there too.
Well, that's like we have that with, if you probably notice, the gas station across from Big Y, it's Miles, it used to be the Stop and Shop gas station.
Yeah,
So you notice there's a lot of cars for sale over there.
yeah.
They're allowed to have them because that side's in Sharon.
That part of the lot is.
That
in
land,
Sharon?
so the pumps and the building are in Walpole, but that part of the lot's in Sharon. They've done that. That reason why is we need a special permit for a car dealership. Sharon don't, so they kept the cars on the Sharon side because it's as of right. So that happens, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that'd be.
So that whole, excuse me, but that hotel up there, that's gonna be an issue, right? Because that's split
Yeah.
between Sharon, I remember,
Sharon.
I don't know if they're still going forward, but
Yeah.
the Sharon planning board came over and met with us, and we talked about it like, it was gonna be, we decided whatever's more restrictive, and they couldn't have more rooms than us, and we could have more than them, and it was all split in the middle.
Yeah, it makes it very legal hard too, because Walpole
Who's
Police.
collecting the tax, yeah.
Well, not even that, but
Huh?
even
Who's
legality
collecting the
wise.
tax?
Well, yeah,
And the
the
water.
tax and, but it was like, you know, the parking spaces, we had different dimensions and the turning radiuses and stuff like that, so there was a lot of different things, but I think what we decided back then was, whatever was more restrictive is what we would go with.
Yeah.
But yet it had to be equal, the rooms, you know?
Yeah, you know, that's the thing, because legality wise, if you get arrested on Walpole side, you go to Denham Court. If you get arrested on Sharon side, you go to Rentham. So what happens if you run down the hallway and you run over into Sharon and you get arrested over there? Which court do you go to? So legally it was a tough one, thank God, it had nothing to do with me.
I'm wondering if the wording is right, what's the one I'm looking at?
Yep.
Establishment such, the regulations applying to the less restrictive district may be considered to exceed. Don't we still want the most restrictive districts bylaws to apply? We're saying they can go
Go
into
into it.
another
But only if the
thing,
lot has
but-
frontage on a street in the less restricted district.
So that's where it gets tricky. So say you go with the more restrictive side and you're going from RB into business. Business is more restrictive on the uses, which says you can't have residential on the first floor.
Residential, right.
So how can you expand
The
your house
setbacks are
into
different
it?
too, yeah.
And the setbacks are 10 feet, you get closer. We'd have to,
They're all kind of like a little bit.
They're all reading in that less restrictive type thing, and I don't think that's, I agree, this does kind of fix it, the 80-20 is kind of excessive. And B is kind of a little restrictive too.
or do
I
we
think
go?
we need to find something that relaxes it, but still goes to the idea that it's the most restrictive
Or do we go
District.
with the use?
goes in.
So if I'm doing a residential
Use.
home, do I go with the use? So that would give us, the house can go in there. We got the 50 foot in, but we're keeping the setback for that use, which is the house. But how would that work in reverse? If the business came into the residential side?
Right, I don't think well, business isn't allowed in any of the residential, is it?
No, if it's a split lot, say,
Split lot, yeah.
because it works both ways. We're thinking
Yeah.
all residential getting into
Could be
business.
business.
Business can
can
reverse and
go
combine.
together,
So,
yeah.
like I think the last case she dealt with was Ian Brown's on South Street. He was a split lot, but he was LM and industrial.
Both commercial use.
But you can jump either way.
Would it pay to call a couple of these towns and just see what their experience is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just to,
I can reach out to the commissioners
I'm
and
just
see
wondering, I don't,
how they deal with
So
it.
Sharon is more distinctive in their,
Yeah.
what's allowed there, but I don't think I like it, you know?
Yeah.
With the frontage and building location coverage, all that stuff, whatever the majority of the frontage is.
Yeah, so
I
that's
like the fact that it's more distinctive, but I don't like the wording,
it's
No.
tough,
what it includes.
because especially if it says the majority of the frontage
Yeah.
is where you get your height and frontage from. Building location, it could be, you could be fronting more in a business district than the residential, even though it's a residential use, but now you're
So you'd be
enforcing.
forced to use it.
Yeah,
So the way it's written, the less restricted and more restricted, I think it can work with the business also, because if you want to expand the business use, so it's restricted in a residential, but
Mm.
you're going into that zone, but you're considering expanding the use from the business.
so then
I think it goes either way.
That's like, well, Norfolk
Which
is
is
kind of
more
like
Which is-
that,
right, the business.
where a district boundary
Yeah,
line
well, if you
decides
wanna
one line of
expand your
ownership of
business,
record
yeah,
at the
then
time
it
such
fits
line
Fits,
is
yeah.
To go
adopted.
into that.
So the owners,
Use that is permitted in one portion of the lot may be exceeded 30 feet into the other portion, provided the first portion includes the required frontage. That one doesn't say anything about less or more. It's
Yeah.
more or less, you can go whichever way you want, but you gotta pick a lane, essentially.
Yeah.
So maybe in terms of situations where it is business, that could be
So,
an avenue.
so one lot
I'm
could
wondering if there's
require
a way
120
with
feet,
Sharon's
and the other district could be 150,
Any
so
of
you'd
the,
have to go with the
50
125 if
houses
you only had
Oh, Sharon's.
Well,
130, say, right?
I would.
well, they're saying as long as the required frontage is included in it, so if you already have it, but
For that particular zoning
Yeah.
that they wanna use, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
The only other question I'd have, just to throw another spanner in the works, say to Sarah's point where a business comes into a residential side, they've crossed over the district zoning line, our buffers come from the district zoning line. So if you're already gone past it, how do you get the 26 foot buffer? Do you go off the property
We're
line?
gonna fix the buffer section also.
But if you cross over it, if you cross over into another
Yeah.
district, now you've gone past, because it goes from the district zoning line, if you're in the middle of a lot,
Yeah.
Because the buffer has to be within your zone.
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
your
well, I
district
don't,
zoning.
you
yeah.
couldn't do it in
Yeah.
violation of another section, so I think if that situation came up,
Then you're
you
locking,
would just say like, well, you can't violate this section of the bylaw.
Right.
so then you'd be
Yeah.
locking it in more to that only residential can take advantage of it, that businesses couldn't.
Yeah,
And then-
unless we rework the buffer section.
Well, John, that wasn't the case because the Marini's up there, he used the residential
Which one?
portion of his property for the buffer.
Yeah, because, yeah, so he had the district line and he had an open space behind
Yeah,
him,
he had almost a full lot behind him,
He'd
a
full-
residential.
he'd full acre behind him.
But for him to get the buffer, he had to go into the residential.
Yeah,
So that's why he shouldn't really be able to be allowed to build.
that's where it gets tricky, yeah.
Right, if he doesn't maintain
Right,
the
he had to
buffer.
keep that buffer. That's the one on 1A.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's behind the building,
Beyond
the
the
gas
building,
station, comes in off
Yeah.
of William Street there,
Mhm.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
split-
yeah.
goes in behind the
Marion.
gas station.
24 Mary in that house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just gonna be one house. They kind of, there's a cul-de-sac, but they
yeah,
extended
but
the area.
then I don't think you can get the house in there and maintain the buffer.
No, he
Well,
gets.
the
he-
buffer is
Oh,
on the
you can?
multifamily side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we could, all right. 'cause
Yeah, the
that was-
buffer's
You
only,
did
on
have
the-
to-
yeah.
They did it,
I thought that was a
where it divided
stipulation we
the
had
lot.
when we
Yeah.
approved it. that he had to maintain that buffer, so.
The big thing was that he had the right in the condominium agreement to divide and do something with the other part of the lot.
Within 10 years.
Within 10 years.
But he still has the buffer from the district bound lines. He built it at,
Oh, he did, okay.
yeah.
Because we approved it, so.
So,
Yeah,
for the sake of time, why don't we just know that we're gonna change it to something like this and come
Mhm.
back with draft wording
Yeah.
for the next meeting?
yeah.
That would
Similar to
Yes.
Westwood,
So-
adding the setbacks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
figure that out and keeping it just
Reviewing the
residential, not
wording
business
to
growth.
make sure
Yeah.
it
The
meets
boundary
what
thing
we
will
want it to be.
kind of get
Yeah.
us caught.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At,
The way I'm looking at it, they might never get to 50 feet anyways, because it seems like they're squeezing, for property, they're squeezed as it is, so
Yeah.
they might not get to 50 feet, so.
And then we also got to watch it too for, you could be, like, again, we've been saying residential to business. It could be residential to residential. It could be
Yeah.
RA to RB.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So like that way, that's where probably the wording for the or more restrictive came in. If I was going mostly RB and I was going into an RNA zone, RB is 15 feet, RA is 20 feet.
Mhm.
Do you transfer there 15 feet onto that side? Now, that's getting away more. Do you go back with the more restrictive, which would be 25 feet in the RA?
yeah.
So that's why I think the the more restrictive zoning comes into play when you're mixing
Yeah.
that. So it's a word salad on that one. I think we have to do a bit looking into it.
yeah, so this time let's just get into the ADUs. So,
No,
so I think we talked about this before, Affordable Homes Act was passed, the
Bless you.
definitions for accessory dwelling units were changed within Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 1A, and then I believe again in Section 8, it further goes into some additional changes. So I don't know if anyone had a second to kind of look over the draft that Carolyn went through. So obviously the bylaw, the definition itself would need to be switched out and replaced with the new definition. Some of the kind of main takeaways obviously is when it goes over the purpose, we try to kind of create something that was, more or less kind of like an in-law with the provision that it could also be someone that was over 55 to try to create some additional room. This one, really, we can't restrict any aspect of it in terms of who can be within that unit. So I would almost take another. She wrote some, she was just kind of like remove that one language. I would almost switch out the purpose language for something that was a little bit more general than just trying to kind of remove
It doesn't
one
say
portion.
anything. Increase diversity of housing stock. Doesn't say anything.
Yeah, increase diversity has.
Yeah, you almost don't need to have the sub-bullets.
You don't need to.
Because you're
Yeah.
taking out one thing and you already.
There's some language that there's in like a model bylaw for ADUs. It's kind of just, create diversity in the housing stock, provide opportunities for first-time home buyers, provide opportunities for, people over the age of, seniors that are aging in place. So it's kind of a generic purpose section that's basically says it's an additional housing option. So
Yeah, 'cause, like, we don't really need to leave the individuals over 55 in there because
No.
can we rent it to anybody?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of obsolete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That portion.
Make a portion. Let me just.
And the owner can't live in the accessory unit.
The owner doesn't have to live in
Well,
either.
No, it
he
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
have to live there, which is
Yeah.
really a
Yeah.
big mistake for me,
Yes.
because
Yeah,
the property won't be kept up. I mean, places that are all rentals, nobody keeps it, the property isn't kept up, and if at least somebody was living there, the owner occupied, they would maintain the property.
yeah, I don't
And
like that.
that's as big issue as the whole thing. I mean, that other stuff, affordability and everything, it's all BS to me.
So, Carolyn also, so when we go into 5-B.2, she referenced, and this has come up before when we looked into this, removing the definition that's in place within the bylaw and just having the definition exist in one location.
Yeah.
So it's either in the back or it's in the bylaw itself. We gotta pick one. So I would just probably keep it within the definition section,
Yeah.
if that makes sense for this one.
Yeah.
It'll make it easy enough,
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it'd work better that way? Give me the definition section?
No, I think, yeah, to Pat's point, put the definition in with all the definitions.
Oh, okay.
Rather
okay.
than have it in two locations.
Two locations, have it in both, like,
Yeah.
especially when we're moving the definitions, doing no tweaking the definitions, put it all
If
together.
that's the case, we probably want a little note within the section,
Yeah.
see definition, page such and such, or see definition section.
Section, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see definition and definitions.
Yeah.
Well, I think anytime it's defined, is it not written in all caps? Isn't that kind of the clue to the reader that it's defined in the back? Or no?
To someone that does zoning, it is a clue.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Because you're used to it from the boards.
Yeah,
But to the layman, he just looks like, oh, it's just capital letters. Like it's very similar to what Ed probably can speak to on the building, the codes.
yeah,
We know the beginning of the codes and the section that pied out. We know to go if you want to say like the sprinkler system. If you want to go for non-sprinkler buildings, it's at the beginning of chapter 9. If you want to go to the rest of it, it's at the end of it. So we know that, but
yeah.
Someone
But when in
control-
doubt, I mean, I think most people would check
Yeah.
I
definitions.
hope so.
You'd hope so. I mean, to John's point, maybe we'd have to find the correct location to put just like the language as defined within section 14,
Mhm.
or which then again we're
Well,
gonna have to amend
14
again.
could be changed to one
Yeah.
or the other, yeah. Yeah, something simple with that,
Yeah.
right? So that wherever it isn't, it's being directed to that spot where
Yeah.
it is,
Within the within definition section, which I don't know if that's.
yeah.
But either way.
You're right, if it was, as it is now, see definition in section 14, but we're gonna change that, so, well, we could say see definition in section 8A, but we haven't got that one yet.
I wouldn't do that now unless we.
Yeah.
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 But we agree, I guess. You have it in one location, and then I can.
Yeah, put all the definitions in one place, it makes the most sense, yeah.
And you want to be consistent with that, so
Yeah.
people know where to go.
Okay.
You can say section 14 for now and then change it.
Right, and
When we
then
need
just
to.
make a quick
Yeah.
adjustment at any point, relabel it, yeah.
Jim, on the 900 square feet.
Yeah.
So how can we make sure it's like restricted to that? Like we talked one time about the basement, and you know, if you make
Basement,
if
cellar,
you make it
or something, yeah.
a separate building and you had the basement, we have to make sure that that's not finished off because you can almost double your.
Gross floor.
Yeah, it comes up gross floor area in the
Says gross-
definition.
Huh?
So that's what we got to find that perfect balance because, so on the garage side, because our gross floor area said it doesn't include basements or garage. I was at a conference last week over this and they were saying, no, you can actually just say the ADU has to be, 900 square feet has to be in the ADU. So the only caveat there will be to the basement point. Do we change our definition of gross floor area? Because with garages, like the garage part I'm not worried about now after talking to council, but on, just to get rid of
Where,
gross, yeah. So the sum, thank you, backward. The sum of gross floor area of several floors, including basements of a principal building and its faces of the walls. It does not include cellars, enclosed porches or attics, not used for habitable occupancy. So that's basically saying like it does include basements, whether it's, so if you were doing an expansion of a non-conforming, you can get 50% of the gross floor area added on. It does, the gross floor area in our division does include unfinished basements. From what I talked with council that we done there last week, you can have it that you said the ADU is 900 square feet of gross area by the state level, which is living space. So we don't have to kind of worry, because that's what the question I asked them was, our zoning says this. And they were saying, no, you can lock it out to, it's just the ADU, 900 square feet living, that's it.
Like I mentioned to Patrick the other night, can we force them to be slab, no basement?
So that's the case, it's probably not, 'cause again, it's because they put under section 3, which is the same under Dover, solar, religion, educational, it's reasonable restrictions. So because we don't enforce that in any other section, that would not seem as
Dictated
reasonable.
inside as well.
Most
that?
people would not do that, I mean, that's very costly,
What's that?
to add a basement to the ADU.
Not really,
You don't
'cause
think
that's-
so?
If you look at the pros and cons, say if you don't put a basement in, you're doing a slab with all your plumbing underground. If anything ever breaks, you're chiseling up the entire slab.
Put them above,
But then
put,
you
Piping.
can't pipe
Yeah.
them. You can't
Don't
put
go uphill.
you can't put your toilet with the plumbing upstairs.
Water doesn't drain downhill.
Yeah.
I mean uphill.
well, okay,
So
yeah.
that's
But the ducts and
mechanicals
stuff,
you can
yeah,
put in the
yeah,
attic,
you can
but
put in the attic.
The plumbing, all that has to go in the slab. So
Yeah,
and then again, you're doing the attic. You're getting special equipment for an attic compared to a basement. So most people would either do a basement or a crawl space. To put them in, like if you put if
Okay.
you could get them to do a crawl space, would make more sense because that you could limit that to.
yeah.
Can you limit it to unfinished basement?
Actually, you should say that the basement should be no more than 6'6", like
Yeah.
72 inches high, because you need 6'8" for a living
Finish.
quarters, so we can
Why are
limit
we
it.
going out of our way to restrict people's,
Because they're all gonna
Because they're
finish
going
it
to
off.
turn them into apartments and then expand it without the air. It's 100%. Because I can
It
say
happens
that
all the time, I mean,
I've
when
had
we go out on.
two genuine
locations.
questions. People came in and asked about ADUs, and the rest
I
were
think we want to avoid dictating the interior.
yeah,
as well.
that's
Yeah.
the killer.
So
Yeah.
I think in terms of
Again,
that
it's a
restriction,
reasonable restriction. So
like you said, I think 900 square feet of living space.
maximum?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's how we wanted to define it because
yeah,
all right, if you
So
put
900
if someone
puts
put
the
a
max
basement,
on it.
yeah,
all right, then that's taking away from the 900 square feet. They're going to have that be incorporated. If they're doing a cellar, well then they can't finish the cellar.
so, yeah.
So
So we
are
can't dictate it. That's the catch of
Okay,
it.
So are we still allowing in-law apartments though, where the primary owner is having a relative live?
No, so,
So-
You know,
right now
it's
it's
This was
allowed.
replaced.
With
We
this,
now-
you don't need it. Replace it completely. What happens is all the in-laws that are in town are basically come pre-existing non-conforming. So they still have to obey by the old laws.
Yeah.
You could come back into town, say, if we have an in-law that was like the 1,200 square feet added on, they still have to keep relatives there. They still cannot rent it out because that's not an ADU. It's an in-law. It's a pre-existing, but it's still an in-law, so they can't go renting it out.
But do
See
we
it right
allow
now?
new
It actually has to be a
in-law
blood
apartments?
relative.
Yeah, so
we don't dictate whether or not they can rent it out.
they
Jeff.
could rent it
in-laws
out.
we do.
We do not
And
do
the
that right now.
ADUs.
We in terms of the use, you can't dictate whether or not they rent it or don't rent it.
No, so our ADU says you can only rent it over 55.
Yeah, well that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the old in-laws, when it was before we done ADU,
Oh, before, yeah.
in-law.
But we're replacing that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
can.
Yeah, but he's
Are
saying
we-
like
So it's a
So it's a
pre-existing.
pre-existing. You've created a pre-existing non-conforming use. So what they can do is they could come back in and go, I'm going to take this extra room here and take it out of it and reduce my in-law from 1,100 to 900. Now they're triggering ADU. Now they can rent it, but they can't go out and rent because we do have one or
I
two.
got you, I got you.
They come back to
Yeah.
1,100?
No.
So
we
my
may-
real question though is if somebody has an in-law
Yep.
and wants to make an in-law apartment, are we allowing that today? Because
You don't have to, it's the same thing.
same thing, well, I
If this
thought.
passes, they only have the option of doing it through this
Through
ADU.
Yeah.
But
We're taking our in-law.
We're saying the owner can't live there.
No, it doesn't have to
No,
live
it
there.
doesn't.
It
Doesn't
says
say
we
that.
don't
No, it
care.
doesn't.
Oh, we
Doesn't
The
don't
have
owner
to.
can or they don't have to.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I thought
No,
we
it's
said-
less
Yeah.
restrictive.
Under
No.
the current
Under-
bylaw that we
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
the owner must
Must live there, but now we're
must see
saying we
their
don't
minimum
care.
portion.
Right.
Now this
Yeah, I
this
thought-
Which is
no,
better.
we're not saying it. The state is
I
saying
might have
it.
misunderstood the note here from the lawyer, I thought.
Let all the state senators and reps and have, say, you have to live in this ADU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
wanted us to have this, you have to live in one.
No, so any in-laws we had,
That
Become
was I
pre-existing
thought we were
You
doing.
non-conforming.
say
Yeah.
this is good
I wanna make
affordable
sure.
housing.
You could.
You live in it.
if you wanted and go that way, some towns have it that you could actually have your ADU and then you could have an in-law zoning bylaw for anything over 900 square feet.
Yeah.
But that's just,
Let's forget
you'd
that.
be insane.
So we're gonna eliminate
Yeah,
the
so there
in-law
was-
Completely.
altogether out of,
Yeah.
right, and do the ADU.
So we
Well,
have
we've already done
okay.
that.
We,
So-
so
already
since
have
we
it.
passed the ADU, we kind of ADU slash in-law. Any of those that were created, and there's only been 3 created since Patrick got this passed, the original one passed
A
that
year.
we're changing a year ago.
No.
We only have 3, but once a new ADU comes into play, they were already 900 square feet anyway. So they're technically ADUs still.
Yeah.
So they want, it's only the older in-laws will become pre-existing non-conforming, but they have the right to come in and say, hey, we're reducing it to under 900 square feet. We want it as an ADU so we can rent it out.
Yeah, how many of the in-laws were over 900 though? Was it a
Most
lot?
of them.
I mean, that's a
We
lot.
started, well, the bylaw, I can't remember exactly how we had it written. I think it was 1,000 square
We
feet.
had it as 1,000
initially.
square feet or 33% your
Yeah.
home.
Whichever was less.
But you were allowed during the special permit as to go bigger if you wanted.
Yeah. So there were a few that absolutely were like 1,200 square foot
Yeah.
ADUs.
Were there really?
Yeah.
Or in-laws technically.
In-laws.
I think, I remember when we were doing the rewrite before, or the master plan, that one of the members of the zoning board at the time said, we have to do something with these in-laws, some of them are bigger than the original house, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was getting out of
I
hand.
think the clause that confused me here was, it's CM4. The Affordable Houses Act does not allow ADUs or the principal dwelling to be owner occupied.
Yes. So what that's stating is if I build an ADU into my house,
Yeah,
I can rent out my ADU
yeah,
and I can rent out my house. So our in-law says you have to be living in one of them as the owner, and you can rent, or you can put your family or over 55. The ADU state has changed that now. If you add on an ADU to your house, you can go down to Florida and rent out your house and rent out the ADU. You don't have to occupy it as the owner.
Well,
right, right.
I think that
Well,
what
then
she
it would
was meant to
comment
say,
with
it
the-
does not
I
require it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why, that's what's hung me up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It made it sound like you can't have a relative
Oh,
living
yeah,
there.
no, no,
So
no.
that's what,
Yeah.
No, it's better than it was,
okay, that's what I thought, so
in my
yeah,
opinion.
that surprised me. Yeah, I also think
It
that,
opens it up. My
You know-
opinion is it opens up to developers and banks buying up single-family homes and use them as a business opportunity.
And people need homes.
so I know,
But that's not a home; that's rental.
I know
It's
in
more-
places,
Rentals are homes also.
But that's
People who live in rentals
in
consider
places-
that their home.
in places that have,
I'm gonna build one, rent
Enacted.
them both out, then go live someplace else, and
in
Sure.
places that have enacted ADUs, and they gave a grace period for people coming forward when they had done one illegally, they had, I forget what towns, but they had many people come forward to say, I really have one. And that way they became legal, you want it above,
Yeah.
you want it above,
Right.
you want it above board, so that, I thought that
Yeah.
was a
So
good
they can
point.
get
Well, no,
the
that's
permits
good.
they need.
We're covered that way because that's in a town where, like Norwood have a lot of in-laws. There is no zoning in Norwood for in-laws, so they were allowed, and now they're being made. But
Very
we,
interesting situation.
yeah, very unique. But we have it in ours. So we already had the in-law since 2014, I
Right.
believe. So anything that was created is still there. And it's like everything. Once zoning changes, you become non-conforming. So the in-laws we have are still legally allowed. They're just non-conforming uses. So they actually get more protection by being non-conforming because you can expand or do anything. So we don't have to worry about someone coming forward going, "Hey, I had an in-law. Can I own up to it?" Because we already had that law in here.
Right,
I mean, there were
right.
some that absolutely were pre-existing.
Oh,
I mean,
definitely, yeah. They were built with the house
We
when it
had one
started.
off of, what was that? Summer Street? Remember
There's
one?
one off someone there's one off of Roberts Road where they built the house with in-law attached. Before this town had an
Oh.
in-law section.
Just added it, yeah.
But they put it in as an in-law in the writing, so when we move forward to accepting it, we could say, yeah, now it's conforming because it meets in-law.
Right.
So, all right, we'll understand that. Yes, we'll go.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
Yeah, so we all understand we need to essentially remove the language that has anything to do with that the owner must occupy one portion.
Mhm.
We have to also remove the language that has to do with Jim doing biannual updates, which apparently we can't do that either.
That was interesting.
so can you back
And-
up a second there? The
Yeah.
last one, I think, was number 14,
This one,
so
14.
they can actually go to the zoning board, so if their lot does not meet any of the setbacks or whatever,
Yeah, it
they
would
can
be
go to the
the-
zoning board to,
Yeah, be a variance. So before the way it was written, it was had to be attached. So if you're adding an in-law unit, you're just treating it the same way you do an addition. So if you were adding an in-law unit and you were in your side setback, then it just triggers the need for a variance like you would any other addition. I think that was the point of putting that in there.
Yeah, so I believe the point is before all our ADUs and in-laws were attached, they had to be attached to the primary. Now because they're standalone and you want to put on your lot, if you put it that you're breaking like a side yard setback, it's treated the same as if you want to go into your setback anyway. You're looking for a variance to put it there. So if you don't have the land and you decide to put the ADU into your setback, we're going to treat you the same as a regular house. You have to go for a variance. The odds of you getting it, slim to none, even though it's,
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
yeah, so this
Because-
actually helps us, protects us a bit
Well,
better.
when they first came out, I said, Walpole is more susceptible to having the ADUs built compared to like Norwood, because Norwood's lots are
Tiny.
quite small.
Yeah.
And they couldn't meet setbacks.
Mhm.
So virtually they couldn't get anything, but if they can go through the zoning board and,
Yeah, so this is one thing that, where we actually have some bit of power in our town is, that's a reasonable restriction. You can put in setbacks in your, because that's, your house has it, if you want to build a house. So, again, we have non-conforming lots with a single family home on it. If you want to put the ADU standalone, or even if you attach it to the house, and say you're going to the left side of the house because you've got a septic on the right or something, you go, I have to go left, and you go into a setback. Either you're already in the setback and you're going more, now you're expanding that's a special permit, expanding non-conformity, or if you go into the setback, that's a variance, as you would have if you were just adding an addition onto your house. So that's what that's basically saying, is
But-
that,
To some extent, it is also stating the obvious, right? I mean, if you're not conforming, you're gonna have to go seek a variance.
yeah,
So I think what she references in this in terms of footnote 4 or 3, and I don't remember them off the top of my head, but is that delving into the whole accessory structure provision that we kind of want to avoid? So if you're doing a detached,
Yep.
and we're looking at that,
oh,
we-
accessory structure itself.
right? We don't want
Yeah.
that to be something that can be 6 feet from a property
Yeah.
boundary. We want to regulate that.
Yeah, so this is, as to Patrick's point, what he's saying is, right now I can do an accessory building, which allows me 10 feet off the rear.
Like a shed.
Yeah, or a 2-bed garage, like you're allowed up to, accessory, you're allowed at 22 by 24,
It's crazy, yeah.
15 foot high, you can go 10 feet off the rear, and if you're back 100 feet, you can go 6 foot off the side. That's our accessory, but you can't change that accessory into, if you have an existing 2-bed garage, you cannot change that into an ADU, because the difference between this is, ADU is a use, not a building, not a structure. The use for an accessory, and our zoning says it, cannot be used for sleeping or cooking. So if you want to stick an ADU in a pre-existing pre-existing conforming accessory structure, you can't put an ADU in there because now the use is not allowed. You're violating our zoning. That's a
Unless
can't get a variance.
unless it's appropriately set back.
if
Then
it's
you
set
could
back,
switch it.
then you could switch it. So you can't create a non-conforming.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, the ADU doing that is a use. No towns have a variance for a use.
Variance,
We
right.
only have variance for structures and setbacks, dimensional, not a use. So you can't take a pre-existing 2-bed garage that was 6 and 10 and go, I'm making an ADU. You'll never be allowed to do it. You have to conform to the setbacks of.
So an easy way to do that is add another regulation that basically says detached ADUs need
Yeah.
to comply with the setbacks for the zoning district.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Word it that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right?
Exactly, yeah.
That way it doesn't. It's not.
'Cause that's reasonable, we can
It's
do it.
reasonable because it's meaning the same. Treating it as you would any other dwelling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The other one, I don't think it's there, which I do want to add.
Yep.
And we are allowed at it as of right, that if you want to do an ADU, it needs a site plan. It has to go for a planning board. That's allowed by state law. So every
Come on
ADU,
now.
yeah. You want to ruin a neighbourhood, you're going to go. I'll make that not
that's
be mean,
an
but
opinion. And
well, that's my opinion. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm going to say if we have it at a, considering the state are forcing this on towns that they have to do it, like, not be mean. An ADU is under the same protection as a church.
yeah.
Like, come on, it's not a church. You're ruining single-family neighbourhoods as far as I'm concerned. But that's my personal opinion. But we have the avenue that we can send all ADUs to the planning board. I'd be in favour of doing that.
I think that's awful.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually.
Hey,
It became a bureaucratic.
I think the state would agree that's awful. I
No, the
think
state says
what
we're
we
allowed
should
to do it.
reasonable, yeah, but going before the planning board,
Yeah, for site plan.
So I would not do that, but a reasonable restriction in terms of locating, we talked about having the accessory dwelling unit, if it's detached, the front not going past the rear of the principal dwelling unit. So when you see it from the road, the principal dwelling unit is front and center.
Yep.
Accessory dwelling unit, if it's detached, is set back farther from the, it's set back behind
principal,
the
yeah.
principal dwelling unit and appears more as a shed. or
Yeah.
a structure than something that might be,
in the front yard.
if you're driving by and it looks like it's right in your face.
Yeah.
Because if somebody did an addition,
Mhm.
they would
Yeah.
never have to go to a site plan review as long as they met the building code. And they
Mhm.
could do, you know, there are small lots that have huge houses on them
Mhm.
that, you know, you might say ruin the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, but that was their right, you know, it's out of character from the neighborhood.
Well, that's right, yeah, because
So-
our zoning says they can.
Yeah.
So that, doing additions, doing zoning says they can,
Multiple buildings on a lot in accordance with section 6C4A.
which we have it, so
Require
that's
site
why,
plan.
yeah. So we
That's
can, because
something
Multiple
different.
buildings.
Yeah.
If they're gonna go with a separate standalone building,
Yeah.
site plan.
that's why if it's addition onto the main house, I've no problem with it. But if it's
I
a standalone
I will
ADU,
fight that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Sit down.
So
That's
that-
the fun of it.
John, you're right, that is
Also,
within the
that's-
zoning, I mean, I think
But that's what
if
the
we
law was trying
want
to
to.
do,
Yes.
was to make it
exactly.
easy to get accessory dwellings, and now all of a sudden you're gonna put
it
this
is,
other.
that's what the law is, so my reasoning behind it is,
Yeah.
add an addition on like we had with the in-law, what Patrick done with the ADU, I have no problem with that because you're adding it to your main house. Sticking a second dwelling unit on a single family lot that's 900 square feet with a parking space, and you're saying, and someone's saying, well, that should be allowed. We don't have a choice on that. The state are saying you have to allow it, and as long as it's got reasonable restrictions, we're allowed to enforce the site plan. So I would be in favour of that because
So
you are putting a second dwelling unit on a single family home.
John has a good point though in terms
Yeah.
of the consistency, so we do have
That's
that
why we're allowed to do
already.
it.
And if we, all they need is limited site plan, because it's under 2,500 square feet, and it's.
Well, no, this would
not
fall
gonna
under
meet
six, technically would
6.1.
fall under 6.4C with
Well,
multiple dwellings.
64, is what you say,
True.
64A.
True, but.
That's also a special permit,
Just
this
saying-
can't be a special
No,
permit.
it's a site plan.
I know, but the whole, more than one
Yeah,
dwelling, more than one structure or dwelling,
Yeah.
whatever, on a parcel is a special permit
Yeah.
with the zoning board. This can't be a special permit, but
but it can be site plan.
it can't be site plan, but it would also fall under limited site plan, as John said.
Yes, it wouldn't need full site plan, you could do
Yeah.
limited because of the size of the structure and
That's the
the
structure.
limited amount of parking.
Again, we're being given something, in my opinion, that we don't get a choice in. You're being told you're doing it, and here's the limited power you have.
Yeah.
And to me, you're putting,
Letting your neighbors, letting the.
especially of the
potential
second
neighbors
dwelling.
know about something
Yeah,
like this
'cause-
is very important to,
It's really
purpose
not.
of keeping peace in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, kinda.
because the state
That's
of,
right.
the state of,
So,
Keeping peace in the neighborhood.
yeah,
Letting
and
your neighbors know something's happening.
especially a dwelling unit, like the state have gone out of the way not to call this a single family home. They have gone out, they called it an ADU. You're taxed as a single family home still. So if you put an ADU on your property, you are still taxed as a single family home. That is not a single family home. That is 2 single family homes on one lot.
so
So what's gonna happen though is you're gonna have very contentious hearings, and people aren't gonna be able to, site plan review has to be following the law, and a lot of people think that, you know, you can
We
come
already
in and
allow-
just say, we don't want it because it does, whatever, but.
Well, no, so this is something extra.
It's-
That if it comes before the planning board, you have the right to look, okay, where are you going to place it? Okay, you have a right to say, okay, we want some shrubs here to protect the neighbour because his house is so close to it. Because again, if they have the land, no one's going to put an ADU, in my opinion, right against their main house. If they have enough land, they're going to stick it as far away as they can, and more towards your neighbour. So if the site plan can look at it and go, because we don't deny, like to your point, if it goes in front of you, even if the neighbours don't like it, it has to be accepted, and you do approve it.
We do, but you know, you have very limited powers
Yeah.
for the planning board on things like appearance,
Well, we-
as long as it follows the buffers.
But
and
that's it, as long as they follow
I mean,
the rules and
so-
regs of the planning board, that's, again, my opinion,
Yeah.
it gives the town some more right, because again, this is not asking, are you allowed to do it or not, this has been told, you are doing it.
And I think I think it goes
You're saying
against the
how
intent
we-
of the law.
Yeah.
The intent of the law is to make it easier to have more
Yeah.
housing, and.
It is, but it's with just
That's-
one more set of eyes to look at it and say, you're not doing something wrong. That's all.
Yeah.
But I'm questioning what the planning board even could do in the terms of legally
Yeah, it's
saying,
it's a waste.
Well, we're
well, we
saying,
don't like the
okay,
way
you're too close to
the
border,
windows
you have to
are, we
move
don't
it.
like
Yeah, a question related to this potential site plan review. I'm trying to find it, but it said somewhere that to do an ADU, you have to have like a floor plan. It doesn't say anything
say that.
stamped or,
That's the
so
only thing it says.
what
But
does
it
that
doesn't-
mean? And we should probably define
Yeah.
that.
Well, so floor plan, so this is.
I could draw
There's
a
actually-
floor plan and just,
Yeah.
Yeah,
give it
that's
to you.
allowed.
Okay,
this-
so that's what I wanna
Site
know,
plan
but
doesn't require a floor
site
plan,
plan
it
is something
requires a-
different,
No.
So, yeah, so here's
Yeah.
what boards and codes get mixed together.
yeah,
Boards ask for stamped architectural drawings of a
Right.
house.
okay.
That is illegal.
Okay, I'm just saying we should define
Say
it.
illegal.
Illegal.
Yeah.
So 1 and 2 family do not require a stamped drawing
Okay,
under code.
mm-hmm,
You can just, but you can do an architecture. Someone can draw a decent plan. Like if I come in with a crayon plan and you were like, "That's not even legible," that's a genuine refuse. But you can't say you have to go and get an architect to stamp this.
No.
Like
Okay.
5, but you can get people. Patrick could probably do it on a computer here in 5 minutes. Get a nice floor plan computer done up. That's a reasonable plan. Again,
So where it was.
Something like
Yeah,
this,
where
but
is it?
It
It's
would apply
in-
for any of those. Right?
It's,
You can provide you that information that you need.
14B, it says to obtain a permit for an accessory dwelling unit, the owner of the property shall submit the following to the building commissioner. So the
okay,
first thing was a notarized letter identifying the owners, and that has been taken out.
Taken
What are you
Yeah.
looking at?
And then, it's right here. Then the second one was a floor plan, and that's the only thing left.
Yeah, the whole thing needs to be
Because C was
done.
taken out too, so really, it's just the floor plan,
yeah.
and there's
So-
no,
So that's again is
so it
the,
doesn't have to be stamped, it
That's
just,
three.
no, there's no requirement for it.
okay,
But they are going to be getting a site stamped
So-
site
so
plan because you have to
the,
show the placement, the setbacks,
so
and
the-
everything.
the notarized
You
letter
would for
was
any
gone.
other like addition.
Any addition,
Yeah.
you will need a civil plan that way.
yeah,
But for the drawings, you can take. That's why you have.
The floor plan.
So that's when you
That's what
often
we're
see
doing.
you have
That's the only
architects
thing we
and you
require.
have designers.
That's to
The
build.
only difference between architect and
And that's
designer is
something
architect is a stamp,
anyway.
designer
That
can't.
isn't-
Designer can only draw 1 and 2
But
family, or they need an architect stamp to stamp their plans for them.
yeah,
So you don't need a stamp that way, and that's building code as well. But we, again, it looks like it's a 50-50 split on the.
This,
Well,
I
my-
will fight you on that one,
My,
but
my only thing with that
it'll be fun.
is our
Definitely.
zoning is kind of weird, and that's an
Yeah.
understatement. But I mean, in terms of, John brought up a great point. We require a special permit for more than one structure or
Yeah.
more than one dwelling on a lot within the GR.
maybe
And
we should require that.
But then, well,
What we shouldn't allow is
That,
more than
to some
one
extent,
building
yeah.
on a
but,
lot.
No, we should.
then
The
site
state
plan
has
review,
passed a
But
law.
then for limited site
That
plan
should go
review, we
away.
have regulations as well. So my only thing with that, I mean.
74A has caused more
Okay,
problems. in the
before
last
getting into like
decade.
one side of the aisle or not, I think can you regulate something in a way that protects the neighborhood, that doesn't
Yeah.
overly burden the applicant? And that's when I bring up the whole placement of the structure.
Yeah.
If the placement of the structure needs to be situated on a certain location of the lot, it may, in effect, cancel potential projects out that may not be really
Yeah.
fitting into the neighborhood, if you wanna use that.
So we'll have to change our.
You know?
This we're talking because we're talking
Yeah.
today about it. This one typical example. Me and Patrick bought on this. We don't quite see eye to eye, but that's his opinion. That's fine. And that's perfect. That's what the whole intent of this
Yeah.
is there is 2 sides of the aisle. Let the people decide. Someone could like this and then bring an amendment to make it a special permit. That can be done too as a waiver or a warrant article. But the Patrick's
No,
point, the
Not
accessory
for this
structures.
one you can't, but
Yeah, for my thing with it
You
though.
can afterwards.
you cannot make it a special permit, that's
No,
part of the
if you
law.
wanna,
No.
if you wanna add multiple,
Not
which is like.
for-
Not special permit,
Oh.
site plan.
Okay,
That's
site
sensible.
plan is
I don't want
debatable.
special. I'm not going for
Okay.
special permit. I'm going for site plan.
That is another question we need to answer.
Special permit, yeah, because I'm looking at number 1 here, only one accessory dwelling unit, this is 3 use regulations, A1,
Yeah.
may be created by right on the
Yes.
same lot as a principal dwelling.
Mhm.
That's saying only one may be by right. Are they saying more can be done?
If you accept the special, if you adopt the special
So
permit
you-
criteria.
I do wanna kind of preface everything with this, so the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which is the organization that they're basically charged with, well, the language is a little different, but they may issue guidelines and regulations for towns that better explain some of the changes to Section 8 and Section 1A. by all everything I've heard, they will be doing that, but we're not gonna hear that probably till February because that's when the deadline is, and knowing them, they're gonna go right out to the very end. And why that's important is because there's language here that, as Jim knows, you talk to a lawyer, you get a different interpretation, which is problematic for us because we're trying to create a bylaw that if I talk to one town council, I have to talk to another council, and we might have a differing opinion.
By town councils.
By town councils, I mean, maybe not our council,
Yeah.
but in general,
Yeah.
what I mean by that is some of the language within section 8 references that, that first ADU is allowed by right, however, actually, let me just read the language for you so you know what I'm talking about.
So I mean, this may all change.
It may all change, but it just, we want to kind of have an idea of what we're thinking
I see.
before we get more guidance from the state.
Yeah.
I just want to read that one section. This has to do with adding multiple accessory dwelling units.
Is this the state's advice?
This is the state, so this is the language of
Is that an advisory?
Mass General Law, Chapter 48,
Oh,
Section 8.
it's the actual law.
It's
So-
actual law that came out.
For more than one accessory dwelling unit or rental thereof in a single-family residential zoning district, there shall be a special permit for the use of land or structures for an accessory dwelling unit. For more than one accessory dwelling unit, essentially, you can.
I'm okay with that. That seems reasonable.
Not
Well,
at that, I will.
The language,
Fight you
but
even
the,
more.
but the thing we've gotten from town council is it says shall, but then there's also interpretation that towns don't actually
Actually
need
have
to
to do
have to do that.
Yeah.
I've always
That I
heard
will.
shall is, okay, that's nice, I don't have to do that.
No, and that
And
not
that's
be
what
mean,
I've
I say
heard
your
from
point,
town
but
council.
that I don't like speaking, and I definitely don't like the cameras, but I would gladly be at town meeting saying that, because I don't know how someone can go for a special permit and put 3 of these in a single family lot and still call it a single family.
Yeah,
So that's
Okay,
just
so it
ridiculous.
would be
That's a
reasonable
compound.
for Walpole to just
Allow
not
it.
allow that.
Yeah.
Not allow more than one,
Yeah,
Right.
not even with special permit.
I agree with that
Exactly.
for right
That's-
now, only for the provision
that's okay.
that we have a general
I think.
residential district that does allow for that higher density use.
Yeah.
We could talk about expanding the GI, that's a
Yeah.
whole different thing, but
Right,
I tend to think
yeah.
it does open up kind of a situation where, we have a rural zoning district, we have pretty large lots. Granted, you have to get a special permit, so that's also a big ask.
right.
It does open up a can of worms a little
Yeah.
bit for some areas that,
if you're out in rural,
yeah, and that, that takes a different look
it
at it.
defeats, to me,
Yeah.
we fight
Yeah.
over this.
Well,
To me, I bought a single family home because I'm just a miserable person. I want to go home and sit in my house, and that's it. If I bought somewhere out in rural where I have an acre of land, you bought it out there because you want that open space, and then you look at your neighbour and he's got 17 ADUs beside you. That's not rural anymore. That's the whole. Again, it's my own opinion, but the whole intent of this was taken from California to wipe out single family homes, and that's my opinion. And to be allowed to do multiple of these and still not call them residents, they're ADU, so it's still, you could have 7 of them and you're only taxed as a single family home. That's nonsense.
I
So
think-
if
I don't
we
think
cap it
everybody's-
as one,
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's looking for 7.
reasonable,
Yeah.
If I'm a
within
developer,
any single
I am.
family,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Because
Yeah.
especially if I don't have to live there, I'll put 7 families beside Ed, and then I'm gone to Florida and I'm getting 3,000 a month for each one. I'm living happy for the
you
rest of my
find
life.
yourself in a
He's
weird
not.
situation. I'm like, all right, so this is another thing we don't
Yeah.
have clear, really guidance on. Can you condoize them? That's
Yeah.
something you really want
That's
to define
terrifying.
within zoning, but that becomes something that's
No,
problematic
you can't
for Jim.
do that. How can you do that?
It's gone to back to the AG for a finding. So this is where the stupidity, in my opinion, again, this is all my personal. This is the one things I am passionate about. The ADU doesn't define that you can't condom because you don't have to live there.
Right.
So it doesn't define you can condom that you can condom. It's been sent back to the
It
AGs
has
to
to be a
define.
single owner.
Where does it say that?
I thought that's part of the regulation.
What did you say?
No.
What was
It
that?
has to be a single owner.
doesn't
Doesn't
It
go
doesn't?
into that detail.
It
The only
doesn't,
thing that it
okay.
references
But here's the
within
fun
owner
part.
is that they
You
don't have to
condo
live there.
two structures.
Yeah,
It's 2 single family homes, 2 units. An ADU is not a home. It's an ADU. The governor will not call it, and you're still taxed as a single. So how can you condo something that's not a single family home?
yeah,
So she contradicts herself in that. So that's why I think the AG will come back going,
you can.
we can't condom, and that's what the word out there is. A lot of people have asked her, and they said they're probably going to move to that side that you can't condo them.
Yeah.
Because now, if you condo them,
then
how
that
do you
opens
tax
up-
an ADU because it's not a single family home?
Right,
So that's,
yeah,
but it is legally right now, there is nothing in the ADU from the state. That's why we need to get this warrant article written before February.
right.
Because if we don't have something in the books by February, you go with what the state is, and that's a free for all. You'll have no say.
This is more of a, I'm just jumping around to the question. So
We'll
this
jump
is
back
on
to
the
your, jump back to your one on the accessory with keeping it in the backyard or the side or backyard.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that idea. And we change our accessory, the definition of our accessory dwellings, because right now you can put not accessory dwelling, sorry, but an accessory building anywhere in your, like there is, like you can go 10
Yeah,
feet off the
you-
rear 6 you could put a garage in the front of your building.
Determine between accessory building and accessory
Well, I
dwelling
think-
unit.
Yes.
so we could change
Well,
it.
this is fair, it's accessory dwelling unit, it's for dwelling, the other ones are not for dwelling.
So
But you also got to watch for, again, it's reasonable restrictions. If you push ADUs just to be in the backyard and you don't do it for anything else, that's not a reasonable restriction. But if you have accessory structures of all kinds have to be in the side or rear, and it's the particular sign, don't put an ADU out in front, then you're showing you have it in other areas, you can do a reasonable restriction on it.
Oh, okay.
So that's why he wants to go that way, which is, I think is a good idea, because
But is that
Yeah.
gonna upset people that wanna put like a
Like a
small shed or something?
I know that
And
it
I see those.
yeah.
well, that's because we
Around
allow
Walpole.
them.
in the
Right.
side yard or even
So,
side.
and now all of a
We're
sudden
gonna
we're
upset
saying you
people
can't.
no matter what we do.
Well, especially
That-
a corner lot that doesn't really have a back.
So-
But what's the
Yeah.
problem with regulating ADUs differently? That like, to the
Reasonable-
side or back, that's reasonable.
Side or back
That's
is
the problem.
reasonable.
Yeah.
The one thing that Jim, like, you just brought up a good point. So I want to put a shed.
Yeah.
I want to put it on my side yard.
Yeah.
If we change the accessory, so if we have to change accessory structures
Yeah,
because we don't want to make any change to accessory dwellings unreasonable, then you have a situation where, all right, well, you can put that shed, it can be in your side yard, but the front of that shed has to be behind the rear of the principal of your home. That may not work from every standpoint
Right.
because we're thinking of accessory dwelling units as we want that to blend more into the area, and we want the principal dwelling unit to stand more
Proud
front
of
and
it.
centered.
yeah.
But you
I
can't.
think that's a reasonable restriction. I'm pro ADU. I
Well,
think that's
yeah.
a reasonable restriction.
And this is where reasonable restrictions come into play. Ed's point to where he said they can't have basement or they need a crawl space,
Yeah.
he would see that's a reasonable restriction.
I don't think so.
But
But
it's not
you
enforceable.
don't- actually, let me go back, we don't need that, because if you go at number 5,
Yeah.
it said, the accessory dwelling unit shall never be enlarged beyond the 900
Yeah.
square feet.
Right,
So,
right.
I would go with that.
But
So,
yeah.
if somebody did finish it off and he
Well,
goes
there-
out to inspect or
Which one
whatever,
were you looking
they'd
at?
have to rip it up.
Number 5.
But basement
A5.
doesn't
They
count.
use-
But to
What's
your
that?
point, you
Watch the
see that
word.
as a reasonable restriction.
Huh.
But that's what you see it as.
Yeah.
Law says, show me where it says that to a single family home, a multi-family home. That's where the reasonable comes in. So when we do setbacks, we say,
Because it's living quarters, it's different.
Okay, how about if
well, no,
you,
that's specific to ADU. So now you're making a law that's specific to ADU. That's not reasonable.
Sure it is.
Well,
Not
it
under state
applies
law.
to houses.
so how about
You wanna
if we
put them
went,
through site plan review.
That state allows me to do that.
Well,
well, what if we went, what if we said something like, any accessory building, less than 200 square feet or less, must be in the side or rear backyard, that
What,
way there
Two
you
hundred
could have,
square feet or less?
oh,
Or more.
so you're saying basically, I got one.
or more,
More.
Okay,
or more
okay.
should be in the back,
Okay.
Yeah.
and less could be out much,
Front.
and that's a 20 by 10. So no sheds are really bigger than that, and
Yeah.
that would cover
That
us
is a
for
good
the.
That is a good
What is
that
what
would
is
work.
the largest? What is the largest structure you allow for like a shed? Does it need to be under 200 square feet or? Do you,
Without a permit, 200 square feet.
so yeah, if you did that,
But you
then,
could,
then
with
you
a
can.
permit, you can,
Then
you
you
can
could
Yeah,
go
that
much
would-
bigger.
yeah.
And if you need
Yeah,
a
if you get a
to have
permit,
the
then you
shed,
can, you could do bigger. So to
Garage or-
Ed's point, if he goes
Yeah.
200 square feet or less,
Yeah.
can be in the front yard.
Yeah.
Anything else has to be in the back.
Yeah.
That covers everybody.
and you wouldn't,
Yeah.
you know, someone that wants to put a shed in their side yard because it
Yeah.
fits.
Yeah,
Well, they could do it under 200 square
Yeah.
feet, and they can make.
Yeah,
it,
I don't
if they
think
want
we
larger,
ought
it's
to,
basically-
ought to
That's
take
right.
that right away from people just because we're trying to do something else.
So I guess 2 questions I probably put to town council. So one, can we just make that change whereas an accessory dwelling unit shall only be in the side and rear yard and that the front of the accessory dwelling unit shall not go past the rear of the principal dwelling unit? Could we just make that as one change? And if not, do we just make the change to accessory structures? I guess what I'm getting at is it unreasonable to just include that for accessory dwelling units and not have to worry about it changing the accessory
Accessory,
structure
yeah.
definition?
Because again, this is something that if you deny it or say, I deny it because it's going to come to us and I go, hey, you're putting it in the front yard, not giving it to you because our ADU says this, and they go to, again, this thing is protected like a church.
Yeah.
Funny as hell to me that an ADU is a church. Unless God's renting or Jesus is coming back to rent it out.
That's the place of education.
Yeah, like, is it a school? Like, can they see that as unreasonable? Because you can't, again, reasonable is what do you approve in other areas? So you can say, well, we do it for this, so we can do it for this. If you say it's specific to this, that's an unreasonable. Because it's specific to it. And that's what the whole intent of unreasonable restrictions are. So that's what we can get with setbacks, lot coverage. They're reasonable because we do it for all the others. But if you do something specific for the ADU, that kind of handcuffs it. Like you want it in the front yard. We patch in like, no, we don't. You're kind of handcuffing it by putting it back there. That's not a reasonable restriction. So that's why.
But really, I mean, what's the big problem? If somebody wanted to put a small ADU in the front and it looked like a shed.
The appearance.
The appearance, like honestly, if you drive down the street, I'd go to the appearance same as Ed.
So you can regulate where the door goes. I think that's one of the things that it's mentioned.
We're allowed to.
You can regulate the front door. So if you're looking at it, the door can be in the side or rear. It doesn't have to be front and center, which helps to kind of look like a shed.
Yeah.
I think. So what's wrong with having it in the front?
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't choose to do that, but
Yeah.
You don't
why
have
do
30 by
we
30
take that right away
I
from
think it
people?
would be
We have to be careful about
Yeah.
taking away rights to people, to property owners, for just somebody's,
I think the reason
they don't like the way it looks as they drive down the
Yeah, and
street.
if you look at the site plan review,
Yeah.
most of what's in the site plan review, I would think it would be difficult for the planning board to change a design which is very arbitrary, because it's not like there's not a safety issue with the driveway, there's not
Right.
there's not an issue with too
So
much
that's-
lighting.
That's why I bring that up so Sarah. So you can regulate an accessory dwelling unit that it has to look and appear as with similar materials as the principal structure. So you can
Yeah.
regulate the actual appearance
That's fine,
of it,
yeah.
Yeah.
which is state allowed. So if you're able to regulate the appearance of it, what's to say you can't regulate? Well, if we want it to blend in with the single family home, well, it blends in a lot better if it's back a little more. I mean, that's just that's where my thinking is. If you're trying to have it fit and blend into that property, then that's
So we could add that to the accessory dwelling unit
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just need to make, we need to check with town council, can you put a law in specifically for ADU, is that reasonable? Or do we change accessory dwelling and do something like what Ed said, 200 square feet come in the front, everything else has to go in the rear? Because again, usually accessory use is a garage, a tool shed.
Right.
99% of them are wedged in your backyard anyway, because that's where you're going to put it.
Yeah.
No one's going to put it in the front.
Unless it's a standalone garage. That's the one thing
Yeah.
I can think. If you're doing a standalone garage and you have room on the side, you're like, well, I don't want to set it back. I want it to be front of my home.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it really, it's
Well,
not
again, there's a difference between in the front of the house or to the side of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Some people
I
don't
think we
mind
listen
seeing the
to what
house and
town
the garage
council
right next
says,
to it.
Yeah.
and then
Unless if
decide.
you're garage
If you're
right up the
gonna-
street.
Yes.
if you're gonna force a site plan review, you would have to update the site plan review process. Otherwise, I don't see a lot of things here that could be enforced.
well, no, so that's
Yeah.
it. So the site plan, again, it's funny because, again,
It's
this,
just to put them through hardship,
Yeah.
that's
But
the plan.
here's the best
Just to
part,
punish them
and that's the good part.
for
The
trying to
state,
create more housing.
yeah, but the state says that's the one thing we can do as of right.
Yeah.
We can't do a lot of things as of right. That is the one thing we can. And under the site plan, the main thing to be looking at is, as you said, just the driveway. Like if you have a main driveway, are you going to continue that driveway to the ADU? Or are you going to stick the driveway, because we've no setbacks on driveway. So you're going to stick the driveway all the way over against your neighbour and go, don't care about him. Drive up the property line and go to your ADU.
So-
It's away from my house.
I want to get back to the
Yeah.
questions in the back. So,
Yeah, we should move on.
yep.
But no, this is all good discussions, Jim. I don't think anybody's looking to destroy neighborhoods so-called, but we wanna
Well, I
foster
think it would be
more
detrimental. I
housing.
think the neighbors would go nuts. If somebody put an ADU in the front yard in a neighborhood,
Yeah.
say going up High Street or something, or one of the side streets over there,
Yeah.
it would take away from the whole neighborhood.
Yeah,
It's better to me, it's bad enough that the ADU is there by your right, but to
My-
ruin the
yeah,
neighborhood, I
my-
mean, the neighbors would go nuts. You said about
Yeah.
the site plan or something like that, you know, that give the neighbors
They can go
a
nuts
chance
and scream, but they're going to approve it because you have to. Again, the reason I'd
So we
say
just have to punish them a little bit. We have
Well,
to
no,
bring
so-
them before the planning board, let them be punished,
yeah,
and then the planning board will have to approve it.
because we don't. So you have the. My thinking is, I work for the town of Walpole and the people of Walpole, and this is something that whether you like it or don't like it, you don't get a choice in. It's been said you have to allow it. It's been. It's like
It's
a 40B.
state law. Yeah.
But-
We go to the zoning board for 40B. We have some that we can say, well, okay, we want the fixture, driveway, stuff like that. You get some say in it.
Okay.
But I just want to say one last thing
Yeah.
though. The reason we got 40B is because towns weren't doing enough to build affordable housing.
Mhm.
If towns had built more affordable housing, there would not be a 40B. And certainly if we have 10%, we have control of 40Bs.
Yeah.
So we have this huge high housing crisis, and
Mhm.
towns have been very parochial. I don't want development in my town, and that's where the problem is. And then we have rents that
But-
people can't afford to rent an apartment.
It's a great point, Bill. I would also just, not, this is just 'cause my own,
Yeah.
you know,
But anyway, I don't mean to
for the
digress.
past 3 years. But in general, though, you're right. I mean, in the sense of creating I call it naturally occurring
Yeah.
affordable housing. When
Yeah.
you're reducing lot sizes, you're allowing for a little bit of higher density. 40B is its own
Not sure.
thing because of because of the SHI list, the subsidized housing inventory
Yeah.
list. Now we're creating an actual true restriction to
Yeah.
the rental or the ownership of it. I mean we've done that. We're trying to have the
Yeah.
inclusionary zoning bylaw, but that is it's my own kind of like gripe because I like the idea of it naturally occurring affordable housing by having
it
that
came
rather
about
than
because
having
it
to meet a
wasn't.
I
percentage.
can't tell you how many people have asked me, why is there no affordable housing in all those big apartment buildings?
Yeah.
And there's a good reason, right? The town
Well,
could have done it.
To the point of, like, I agree, we need more housing for people.
Yeah.
This is something that's been done. Don't really have a problem with the part that you want to create more housing. Stop calling it affordable housing. There is no such thing.
It's
I'm
not-
sorry.
it's-
There is no
it's
such
not,
thing.
it's not affordable, it's creating the
What they
housing
call
stock,
Yeah.
which
affordable
will
housing.
hopefully push
not
prices
affordable
down.
housing.
We're short 200,000 housing units.
Yeah,
In
it won't
essence.
put prices down,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if someone's going to build an ADU, it's going to cost them roughly, today's price is 180, 200,000. I've not met a person yet who would let me live in that ADU for $700 a month, $800 a month because they want affordable units. They're going to get $3,000 for that. They're going to rent it for $3,000. They're going to make a lot of money. It's a housing stock. The other thing we got to watch,
Okay.
think of too, is with ADUs, when they're created towards the 40B side, I know that brings our housing numbers up, which reduces the 40B, which takes us out of safe harbour as well. So it's not considered. It does.
I know, but it's gonna be so small. Anyway,
Yeah,
I do have
So
a comment on number 7, just quickly.
are these the questions?
Yeah, the use and regulations from ADU.
Oh,
Yeah, it just says any exterior changes. Can we say like exterior appearance instead of like,
which
I don't know, the way
Number
it's.
7.
Any exterior changes to current accessory dwelling unit shall be similar in style.
I don't have that as 7.
So it's
Use
regulation.
Use regulations.
I just thought we should say,
Number
So-
7.
to
3A7.
talk about the exterior appearance,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like, which is the way
exterior.
we had it before, I think, like that it should match.
Be similar to the person.
So that
dwelling
provides
unit.
some protection
It
by
stands out.
saying that.
That
So-
stands-
Exterior changes shall be similar in style to the primary dwelling
Yeah.
unit, so
So
that kind of
I
language.
do want to kind of
Yeah.
just go back to go to the questions and
Yeah.
go through these because
Yeah.
it is
Okay.
something that she brings up. So, all right, first comment, HLC's working on guidelines, cool, great. Special permit, we all agree right now,
Yeah.
probably no if we can. Are there any existing ADUs or apartments that may not satisfy the definition of an ADU? Do you want to incorporate or allow, for example? Are there in-law apartments that are no greater than 900 square feet that you want to convert to an ADU? I think this goes back to the question if we have larger ones.
They can
I don't even know how we go about that process in terms of if someone has a 1,200 square foot ADU, they're probably not going to knock on your door and be like, "Hey, am I allowed?" They're just going to probably
do it, and then the neighbor.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't even know how to really answer.
But again,
that.
if someone just says they are going, as you said, they are going to do it.
If
But
you
if the
find
neighbour
them-
turns them in and we go out and they're renting it, we'll hit them a fine for renting out something they're not allowed to rent out. Then they can come back and reduce it on paper and get it done legally. And then they can rent it out. But
So-
for that portion of time, they're getting fined while it's done. Because again, you went through the special permit, you went for the in-law back then, and again, as I always said, special in-laws were a unique ask, because you're asking for something that's got a shelf life. Usually it's a morbid thing to say, but you always ask, my parents are moving in. Your parents aren't going to be there for the whole entire length. They're eventually, unfortunately, going to pass away, and now you're left in an apartment. You knew that was a special permit, you asked for that permission.
Yeah.
So if you go renting it out, then we will hit you with violations if we find out that you're doing it. Then if you want to reduce it to 900 square feet and legalise it as an ADU, then rent it out to whoever you want. But you have to reduce it.
We used to have, or I guess currently do have, some kind of regulation where you inspect it or something, so you have a record and contact of people that have official accessory dwelling and or in-laws?
So the new ADU under Patrick, when he brought it in last year, said we had the right to go out every 2 years.
Yeah.
So we've only got we've only had 3 of those done in the
What
last
about
year.
before when we had
We
in-law?
have a
I'm just
record.
saying, like, we should just give them a notice.
I get what
You
you're
may
saying,
have
Sarah.
heard there's new law, just be advised, you can't rent this out. Just, can we give them notice?
We
That
can,
you
I could-
are under,
What
The
they're
old-
saying is we have
Yeah.
a record of everyone.
Every-
we give
yeah,
a
ADU
special
that was-
permit
yeah.
to, anyone that's over 900 square feet. I
Yeah.
mean, this is just me and Lauren can take a look, and we can
Yeah.
have the addresses and
send them a
just
notice.
send them a notice. We don't need to
Yeah.
incorporate that in terms of zoning.
Yeah,
but just-
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you, like, if somebody tries to use the old one
Yeah.
and then they try to do, but at least let's do the courtesy of just
It-
advising
Yeah,
them, like,
that's no problem. Yeah.
It's almost, to me, that you'd almost have to grandfather the existing in-law apartments, because if we do away with in-law apartments and we just go to ADUs, they're now,
no, that's
No,
what
they're,
he said,
they're
they
not
will,
conforming.
they will.
So they still got the protection, so they're still fall under what the old in-law was. You can never rent them,
You can't rent them unless.
because it's still a single family home.
If they're over 900.
Yeah,
Did
you have
she
to come
say-
and register
so-
it.
Town council says, do you want a procedure? We can think of a procedure, or we could say, no, you gotta reduce it to 900 square feet and not have to put too much.
Yeah, because that
product,
is
right?
what it is.
I mean, that's just.
So, because that's the thing, is an ADU is 900 square feet. If you come in 5 years later and go, hey, I got an ADU, I want to add on another 50 feet to it. You can't, because once you go over 900 square feet, it's not an ADU.
Right.
You can't even get a variance for it. So I think if we just go that way, if we send a notice out to everybody that has an in-law going, hey, you have these, you can rent them out, but you have to come in and register them as ADUs and make sure, give us a new floor plan showing it's 900 square feet. That is allowed.
Yeah,
That way is pretty straightforward for us.
Yeah, so the next one was, do you want a procedure to allow an ADU that is larger than 900 square feet by special permit? I have to say no.
No.
you said no, I said never.
Yeah.
My notes.
The next will language is, do you want to add reasonable regulations related to water supply and disposal of
I think
sewage?
that's reasonable.
Yeah, this next one, it's kind of,
Yeah,
Sure.
You're
I
gonna have
think-
to bring
Yeah.
water to it, if it's part of the building,
I think, would they
Usually-
be
At least
treated
for
as a separate
standalone.
unit, and you would have to.
Standalones
separate
you would-
utilities,
yeah.
as
cause I
detached,
don't think
I
they
would
wanna
think you would
run a
have
line
to.
from their
It's
house over to there,
so
they're
the
gonna
way
run
the
a
state
line.
at the state meeting
Oh,
last
maybe
week.
not, yeah.
they
Um,
might, but usually, like, you're right, if they're
It doesn't
connected, they're
essentially do
fed
either.
into it, they're not.
What?
You can
coming
either
from the
bleed off the
street.
main
Yeah.
house. You can say for Title
Um,
5, you can put the
That
ADU
language,
and
though,
the
John,
house
would
together in a
just
septic
defer to
system,
whatever
one
the
septic
town's
system,
process
as long as it meets
is.
the Benjamin
Yeah.
count.
So they would
So
just have to
Maybe
go
you
to
just
water
go
and
to water
sewer.
and sewer.
You could go either way.
Yeah.
I thought if it was detached, that
Or
you
board.
probably should have separate utilities, but
So that's the thing.
You don't have
This
to.
language, the way I see it, I mean, it just deferred to whatever the town's
Yeah.
process is right now, and they'll just have to go
Yeah.
to sewer and
Yeah.
water, and if sewer water
Yeah.
says no or yes, then they gotta.
Yeah.
I mean, would the water and sewer considered a condo? Like, as a
Well, they have
condo,
different
as a
billing.
type, because they require separate utilities for condos.
Exactly, but it's not a condo, it's an
I
ADU,
know.
which is no man's land.
So I know right now,
So
like,
So somebody has to make a ruling on it,
I'm
right?
pretty sure we did not, they don't allow for a second meter.
On the original ADUs,
on the original
no,
ADUs.
for the unit attached, but
For this
It
one.
had to be
it's-
under
Well,
the
you
same.
could do a sub-meter and the landlord could, bill them accordingly,
Yeah.
you know, so like in Norwood where we have is on rental units,
yeah.
you'd have a sub-meter, so there's one meter that comes in that the town bills the landlord for, and then you can subdivide it
Yeah.
and sub-meter it, and then the landlord would be required, or would have the option to bill the
Bill.
tenants. But the way it works is the town does not wanna chase tenants,
Yeah.
because they change over all the time. You're renting, you don't pay your water bill, how are we gonna get your money, you know,
Yeah.
so.
So they could get a second meter, they could get a standalone meter, standalone power, But the way our water is, we can go, well, it's coming onto your principal, you're the principal owner of that lot, you're responsible. He goes, well, my tenant ran away. Going, yeah, that's life, you're paying.
Yeah.
If you don't, we'll shut your water off to
You
more
own it.
buildings.
Okay.
Like-
So yeah, that's we'll include that. 6. This goes back to Sarah's point, and this kind of goes back to what we're talking about in terms of I want it to look like a single family home. Do you want to include required landscaping, screening, or any other parking related to the ADU? So there's provision with parking that we have to do. So I think it's like you can't allow more than one, and if it's within a
Right.
half mile of a
If it's within a
transit
half mile,
station,
you
you don't have to have it.
Yeah.
But landscaping and screening
So that would be good.
is kind of what we're talking about in terms of setback, in terms of
That might take the place of the site plan review, if you can put those rules just in the.
yeah.
So that's where we need an answer, because again,
It's just part of site plan.
well, so that's the point. That's why I think the state said you can do site plan as of right, because if I build a single family home, do I need to do landscaping and screening? There is no. The only person you can do it is on in business, central business for the buffer zones. So again, it's that thing is what's reasonable restrictions.
Well,
If
if
you-
you make them go to limited site plan review, it's
Yeah.
kind of best of both worlds.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
it's
Well, that's
limited
why,
because.
that's what
That's
I was
only-
thinking.
that's
Would
only
that be
Jim.
site plan
Limited
be
applies to
okay?
anything under 2,500 square feet, and
Yeah.
it's all have to be under 2,500 square feet.
Yeah.
So.
So but it gives us. That's why I'm saying
It
it.
doesn't have to do full site plan,
No.
it just needs limited.
But the state gave us that choice. That you could. The state. That was one of the regs in the state said, that, and that's why I know you don't agree.
But that's a different thing. Going to your office.
That's not limited site plan. My limited site plan is me and all the department heads. Everybody. So that's the difference between limited and full. Full site plan is the board.
Well, we did this for outdoor dining.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. You have, comments from fire, comments from
I would be comfortable
DPW,
with that.
comments from.
At least unlimited, that would.
So it doesn't come to the
that.
planning board.
No, it'll come to all department heads.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because again,
Still a waste of time, in my opinion.
but that's the thing is the
That
the
process
state
is a
are
lot
approving the
more-
ADU, making you take it, and they said we'll let you do a full site plan. So the fact the states are saying that when they basically are saying you have no choice to take this, the fact they're willing to go, hey, do site plan, says to me they're in the wrong, so they're giving you something to protect your town with a bit to a degree. Because with the ADU, again, I can push it as close as I can to my neighbour. I can put a drive as close as I can to my neighbour. How can we keep that peace between the neighbours killing each other? Because again, if you want to live in your house and rent it to someone, we all have good tenants. We all have bad tenants. And if you're not a landlord living there, if you're a landlord living somewhere else, you don't care if they're making your neighbours mad because you're making money. So that's why the fact the state they tie our hands on most things, but they're willing to let us do a full site plan as of right. When they're saying we have to accept this, it gives the town some protection, in my opinion.
It's the same like MBTA. I mean, you would always do full site plan review if
Yeah.
there's any like larger housing development.
Hmm.
They made a point of calling that out, that it still doesn't go to site plan review. Because they just wanted the use,
Right.
is kind of what the state, I think that's what I guess the intent of them allowing you the town to include site plan review if they so wish to, because site plan review, sometimes you could deny it, but technically you don't deny
You approve
it.
it.
You really don't approve it. You don't
It will
deny
be
site
proven,
plan
but it kind of gives the neighbours, even though
It's
they
gonna
have
be a
no
miserable
choice.
experience for anyone. I wouldn't wish Walpole Planning Board on anyone.
But the other thing which we haven't actually, I don't think anybody mentioned, or if you understand this too, is this is not just single family residence. This is in GR, business
that-
district as
No, but
well.
it's only where single family
So
is allowed.
this is another element.
Yes,
that-
Allowed,
think
yeah,
so.
which is,
Yeah.
so single family are allowed in all the
GR,
regional
right, yeah.
GR, business, CBD. I've already checked with council on this.
No,
Yes,
Which council?
I don't.
3 different
think
councils. Tillman was
so.
one, Allen was another. Because I asked that question.
Because
did
the
we
mixed
talk about
use.
It's not so.
Oh, I'm sorry, we did go over
We did
this
go
with
over this.
Carolyn, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So
right,
no,
this is.
it's where single family is allowed as of right. So if I'm in it'll never happen in central business because we don't have the land, but just to give you how, that's why I think they're allowing you site plan is, say TT's, that thing's been abandoned for how many years before I even got here? I think it was before I even got in this country. I can put business on the first floor and I can do a single unit as of right on the second floor. I don't need zoning permission. It's allowed in CBD residential. But I can put one unit there. Wherever you were allowed to put a single unit, you were allowed to have an ADU as of right.
But it's kind of silly when this is central business district because you can.
It's crazy.
Because you're,
But I'm
you
just
can
giving you
already allow
example.
mixed use by
So,
right. So
take right
But there will
now.
be occasions that will come up
Yeah.
that it would come up.
So take
And
across the way
It
here.
doesn't
allowed.
even make
So-
sense.
Does limited site
Like
plan?
in the state of
abutters,
Massachusetts.
Notified on limited?
limited now.
No.
But that's
They-
allowed.
See, that's the thing,
It's allowed.
John, you
Yeah.
you
You
Right.
said
can put two
that.
units above a business
Right, it
right
would be.
now.
Yeah, so
Doesn't
that's
have
why
to
I
be
would want,
ADU.
that's the
Why
only
you
reason why I
wanna
wouldn't want the
restrict
site
yourself?
plan, is because I think the abutters should be, at
Take-
least know about it.
Yeah. But so to your point too is GR. Take Stone Street right across from Town Hall here. There's some two family. I can have a single family on a very small lot. I can put an ADU on that. If you go down
Yeah.
the street here, there is a red brick building on the right across from Verizon. It's got 10 units in it. That legally can have an ADU.
I think an ADU can only be from
Nope.
a single family home.
So it's
Nope.
a single family.
That's where
district
people get mixed up.
Is the way that it's written in the law. So,
Yeah.
but it's kind
So
of
You
it
need
adds
one. It
weird-
says you need one principal structure. So if you have one principal structure with 15 units in it, and you have the land, you can put an ADU on it.
So
That is that one.
let me go to the
I don't
thing.
know.
So let me go to the definition.
Oh, that's not quick. Not be mean. That's not questionable. We've already talked to town council about it. I've talked to Tillman, Amy Quessel. That is 100% allowed. It's stupid, but it's 100% allowed. That I can 100%.
So
Passion just like me half time, but
no.
you would say
So
I'm right.
the conversation about the central business district, I think, is silly.
That's funny.
Because no one's actually going to be like,
No.
I'm going to put an accessory building.
Right.
You can build 30 apartments.
Right.
But
Exactly.
just as my example on Stone Street here,
Yeah.
the 10-unit building.
So what?
I was gonna just make a suggestion, 'cause I know it's
But
getting late. and-
let's think about the general residential district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the language is that it is in a single family district, not a single family use, which is confusing because we allow single family in the GR as well as 2, 3, and multi.
Right.
Town council has, Amy Quessel, I went to a webinar where she mentioned it, and we reached out to Carolyn as well.
I got Caroline, I got Tillman.
Technically, it could be an ADU on a 2-family or something like that. To give you an example of like the general residence district.
Yeah.
Now, that also kind of comes into the question of, well, the GR it's the smallest residential district, it's the smallest lots. We still can regulate the fact that it needs to comply with the dimensional regulations. So it may not really be realistic,
But it's just like,
but it is kind of a weird caveat that isn't
Yeah.
really.
and that was my intention of why I like a site plan, is because you can take, if you have land, you can put a full standalone ADU behind a 10-unit building. If you have 2 single-family homes on a lot, so just actually, the last one's in front of you, Brook Lane, he's doing 15 single homes. He can't do 15 single ADUs because it's in GR, it's one lot, there's no principal structure. But if you do a subdivision, they each have their own lot, they each have their own house, you can do it. Also down here, if you build in a GR, you do a multi-family building now, and you say you have enough to do 10 units, 10 apartments, and you have only one principal structure, you legally can get an ADU, and I cannot deny it. It's weird, it's silly, and that's part of the reason why, and we've got people coming and asking about it, and that's why I've checked with town council, I've checked with 3 different councils, and they all said the same. If there's one principal building on a lot that allows a single family house in that zone, you are allowed an ADU. So 10, 15, just to go way past extreme, it'll never happen, but 95 West is 200 units. That's one building. They technically could, if they had the land, put an ADU there.
So they can put an ADU on this building.
Yes.
What, this building?
No, it's not dwelling.
No, yeah.
So,
Just change it to
So
apartment, you'll be good.
you don't think the AG will clarify that?
So this goes
She
back
has.
to- well,
She said like it's allowed.
Okay.
So that's why I said I usually
Yeah,
argue
more
back and
housing,
forth.
more
Guys,
housing.
it
I get
all
it.
goes back to this.
Yes.
There are guidelines that are supposed to be produced by HLC. So what we have is the lawyer interpretation. And the lawyer interpretation is pretty good because that's that they're looking at it from the basis of how it's written. But if HLC is like, hey, maybe written that way, but this is the
This
actual
is what we
guideline
meant,
interpretation, and we're going to, they're effectively the they're like the gym
Yeah.
for the state. They're gonna interpret it the way that
Yeah.
They want it. Yeah, what
And
if-
right now, they
Yes.
haven't said it, and it's been
So,
turned, we have, again,
But
we,
that answer, hopefully,
Yeah.
like, maybe it changes, maybe it
it might,
doesn't.
yeah.
But we're
Right
in a
now-
position right now where we don't know until
You gotta
those come out.
do
Yeah.
something based on what we can do now.
Yeah,
Which is
what
why
we do
this
know is you are
bylaw-
allowed to do it.
So Jim, how about, would you be okay with, say, a site plan on the detached unit?
That's all, yeah, detached. If you
Detached.
attach it to the house, no problem.
There's no
But if you're doing a standalone ADU, I firmly believe it should go to some site, a site plan, either limited. Personally, I'd rather go for full site plan, because again, you're asking for something, it's been protected under Dover, which is funny, in my opinion, but you're also asking, you're basically removing single family homes. I know some people don't agree with that. You are putting a 900 square foot house
The
That's
size
some-
is
we
gonna
have
be
house-
Limited to,
900, but it's still
I
a
think
separate
limited
dwelling
site
that you
plan,
can
it
rent. It's
it
not
can
gonna be
be void
family, it's
site
not gonna be
plan.
friends, you can't rent it to complete strangers. And again, site plan will allow you, if you want to put, again, landscaping, shrubs, unless, to Patrick's question is, if she says that's reasonable restrictions, can you put that in there? But it does say, well, where's your driveway going to go, where's your parking going to go,
And it's
which is
also-
site plan.
Yeah, I think it's more reasonable to put those kind of restrictions as part of the law, be very focused on the things that need to be controlled for ADU. Most of what's in the site plan review would be, not relevant at all.
Lighting, safety.
And it would
I
be,
mean,
so maybe
landscaping and
the,
screening is one
what?
thing where I would say we all agree, like, hey, yeah, if we can regulate that, cool. Is Jim just saying, like, okay, that's a nice fence, or do we have to have a little more regulation? That does kind of offer a
That
little
gets
bit
tricky,
of
because
a-
I'm
that
gonna say
gets
you're
tricky.
putting,
Yeah.
you're putting
So-
5 arborvitaes are gonna be 50
How
foot
do
high
we
in 2
define
years.
that? Yeah.
I'm gonna build a bunker between you and your neighbour. But that's that's a personal thing. But I guess that's why I would prefer either a limited site plan or a site plan. And the fact that the state, again, I'll keep going back to it, I'll beat it to the dead horse, but to go back to it is, this is something they're forcing us to do, but they have openly said, they're giving us the thing going, yeah, you do a full site plan. So the fact they're forcing us to do something, but they're saying it is 100% acceptable to do a full site plan, raises the hair in the back of my head. Because why are the state giving us that at least, because I think they're doing it to say, well, we're making you do it, here's a choice, you can control it some bit. Rather than saying you're doing it, like, again, with the MBTA zoning, we got to do some building on it, but the MBTA zoning was, you either pass it or we keep your money from you. It was like, you're doing it or else. They held a gun to your head. I think they're saying, yeah, you have to do ADU, but you can do a site plan to give the residents next door, because again, they can hate it. If someone in my neighbourhood did it, I'd be the first one there going, I hate it, but they have the right to do it, and I say, yeah, you're dead right to do it, I'm going to be paying your backside while you're getting it done. But I would like the neighbours to be able to speak on that it's going that close to their property. Is the original owner going to be staying in the house? Like, at least give them some information rather than have, again, a 900 square foot house is not bad. We have apartments that are going for $5,000 over here in 95 West. They're not even that size. So it's a nice apartment.
There's a lot of kind of just
So my thing is, I would be good with the limited site plan, but to go back with what John said before is, I would love to see the abutters notified about it, so they're not blindsided. You know, they're blindsided, so, someday.
So that's where limited
an
site plan.
excavator shows up in the backyard and
Yeah.
they start
well,
digging a hole.
the limited site plan, do you approach the abutters?
No.
You don't.
So limited site plan is that thing, it's just the department heads look at it and say, yeah, it's good, because we're only looking at the project from
So
our
again,
department
that
heads.
avoids the neighbors.
Yeah, so where the site plan doesn't,
But it specifically says you don't need site plan because the building's so small. It avoids full.
but that's what I'm saying, is the state has said you're allowed to ask for a site plan.
I guess what he's saying is,
He's going on our zoning.
no, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
which
So
is
you're
right.
going under our zoning. If we were to, because it's its own section, its own use.
We can
Like, we
accept,
could-
We'd
we
have
could-
to adjust the limited site
No.
plan or something.
well, not so
Yeah,
much,
eh?
no, because the site plan comes
I don't
under
think-
ADU approval through the state, so we can put site plan directly into the ADU approval. And say that if you want an ADU, you have to go for a site plan.
True, but John, I mean, this is going into the weeds, but hypothetically, yeah, you redo section 13, you probably want to make some reference to it if you were including it. In
But again, if you drop it down to say 900 square feet to catch the ADUs,
yeah.
now you've got a ton of other business that wouldn't
Well,
require it.
But no,
Oh, wait a minute,
you
we're talking
have
about-
to specifically.
Wait a minute,
highlight
I'm
it.
just,
If you're,
I've your whole argument though, Jim, about full site plan review. Say full site plan review for the use if it's 900 square feet. I know the state said we could.
Yeah.
But are we over-regulating based upon we're not allowing, if someone's doing an addition that's under 2,500 square
No, because
feet?
if John turns the page back one page to full site plan,
Oh,
Yeah.
read what it says for full site plan. What's the size required?
Well, no, limited site plan is required 2,500 dollars.
What's full site plan?
Full site plan, well, it's only for really multi-families and things like that, increases in parking spaces.
what's the square footage of?
There is no, okay, alterations or reconstruction exceeding 500 gross square feet or expansion of the current building footprint of
So
not more than 2%.
Expansion of creating of 500 gross. This is 900 gross. So technically, because our zoning is kind of tweaky, it triggers a full site plan.
Which is
That's
why
for-
we're gonna
but
read
that's
that.
for multi-family, commercial, and industrial addition.
Alright.
This is multifamily. You're getting to a standalone ADU.
so I think, I know it's getting very
Well,
late.
the
Yeah,
taxing
we
is
need to
one.
push
But
forward.
if that would
Just-
qualify, yes.
Yeah.
Bill?
I just want to make the point that I think nobody wants to have, ADUs come in a way that is destructive to the neighborhood, but it seems reasonable to if we can manage to have reasonable controls and input, but not requiring a full site plan review, because it's not even appropriate. So if you do a full site plan review, you're going to be requesting people, and they're going to have waivers, and it's a whole very complicated process. And
But
it's,
there's no
and
waiver.
expensive.
There's gonna be no
It's one
waivers.
building.
No waiver in the site plan
It's
review
not very
requirements.
It's
Requires a
gotta be
lighting
limited
plan.
by
I
They
don't
have-
wanna do
setbacks.
a traffic study.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
need
no,
a waiver.
That's a requirement that you can do, and you can.
You have to officially get a
That
waiver.
is
Yeah.
require a
So
waiver.
That's an
I just
email.
wanted to, but I just want to say, I think if we could do this as part of the law, so,
Yes.
so it requires, buffers with driveways and buffers with vegetation.
Yeah. So that's what we need.
That
The
would
whole
really-
intent is
that
to
would
have,
probably
lay out
do-
reasonable regulations.
That would
So
probably
that's
do
the-
what you're
yeah,
trying to do.
That's why Patrick's
Yeah.
going to ask that question. Can we
Yeah.
do that? Because
Yeah, and I
technically, we can't enforce landscaping
Yeah, I think
on
that-
single-family homes.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying to you, it is reasonable to ask. Under zoning law, that is not reasonable because we don't ask it anywhere else. So that's why we can ask for a 25 or 30-foot setback in RA.
So we'll need to get,
Because it's a reasonable, we do with every other building in RA, we require a 25, so that's why we can ask for that. We can't ask for something that's not in the other zoning, even if it is reasonable and the smart way to go, that is not seen as reasonable by state law. So that's where it gets, if you do something that's specific to one thing and nothing else, that's not reasonable. And that's why the site plan falls into it. And that's why I think the state said you can do a full site plan because you do the landscaping, you do the driveway, you do the parking. That is all in 99% all site plans.
But now you have someone who just wants to do, say, a small ADU, 900 square feet, and all they want to do is build one. Maybe they're doing it for their relatives or whatever, and all of a sudden you're incurring all the engineering costs, you're incurring the time it goes to before boards, and it's requiring a lot of
Someone's gonna get
Don't detach it.
$2,000 a month, 24,000 a year, and they're worrying about paying costs for site.
Well, they
plan.
might not be. They may be using it for a family member or something.
Then
Yeah.
they can do
And not
in-law
every
apartment.
ADU is gonna be 900 square feet.
Yeah.
Somebody might do one 500, 600, I mean, whatever they need.
so
Anyways,
it's,
I would
it's,
think
it's
most of
almost
them
10.
would-
Again,
I think what we got is some pretty good information, and what's gonna happen is, me and Jim are gonna set up time to talk to Carolyn. I have some good questions. We have some guidance on this. The site plan aspect, we'll have to
fight that
debate
one
that at an earlier time later. But what I want to do for the next process is get you draft bylaws. And so I know this was kind of a draft, but get something that's a little bit more from the guidance we got today. The floodplain one, I know we didn't get into that. I
yeah,
will.
do you wanna touch on that still? or-
I think
At the time, I think.
I didn't have a whole lot of comments.
There's not a
on
lot,
everybody else.
there's not a lot we can do about it anyways.
Yeah,
I will
It's
say-
all
It's more
Yeah.
State.
regulated.
It's
and-
90%
And John, I
from the
will
state.
say to the
It's all state and
floodplain.
federal,
Yeah,
right?
so
So it's like, I didn't see anything.
yeah, the bylaw itself, I had to submit it to DCR, and so I submitted one copy. He came back with some edits, and I submitted that because he's like, all right, now submit that to me again. And so I haven't heard back from him yet on my second draft, which is the one you're looking at. So that's something that
You're still waiting. to
I'm,
hear.
I'm letting the state basically dictate what we need to have in there so we are compliant with what they want us to do. So I think we can talk about it, but it's kind of,
Okay.
that's the
So-
right
so
to
the
say.
It's not at the
Yeah.
point where we need to,
The only
Yeah.
thing, somebody had said to me that, in Walpole, we can actually build in the floodplain, if we,
It's height, so it depends on which zone you're in, and that's through state law.
right,
So you can go into a zone AE, zone X, zone A, and have different criteria. So say like a zone AE, you have to keep all your mechanical 2 feet above the floodplain level. Other ones is you can have to be 10 feet above it. So you can build in the zoning, or in the floodplain, all that, to Patrick's point, comes from the state, and we can't deny that.
So we looked at a few different, I mean, we'll go into this, I had my system more and kind of looked into neighboring towns and what they had and kind of compared to what we have. Because I've heard the same thing too. It's like, can we try to avoid not building within the floodplain? That seems to be kind of, we're worried about long-term effects of what could happen down the line. It seems to be something, and granted, this is probably like 5-8 towns that we looked at, something that is kind of consistently permissible.
Yeah.
So, and that's, to Jim's point, that seems to be following what was kind of like standard state language to allow for that use, or allow for development within the floodplain meeting certain criteria. I can pose a question to
would the
DCR
town have
about if we don't have.
any responsibility for our house that it built, whether we allow it built in the floodplain and then it floods?
If the house is built in floodplain or floods?
Town has no
So no,
responsibility.
so the state sets, so again, AE zone, you have to keep it it was 1 foot, the new law came out, says it has to be 2 foot above that. So if your ground is 154, you have to build and keep all your mechanical above 156. Because that's on 100 plain or 100-year flood, you'll get that. If we just got a freak storm that went above that,
To fix them.
that's their,
That's their.
like a basement flood,
That
it's
could happen
just
the way
life.
things are going.
Yeah, and that's what your flood insurance is for,
Yeah.
and you have to have it in that zone.
If you can
Oh,
get
you
it.
have to have it? Okay.
Yeah, the
Well, that's
So,
that's
That's
the
the other-
point. We need to update the bylaw not only because they're redoing the new FEMA maps, but it's for flood insurance purposes as well. So that's, if you're building in it, you're
paying a lot of money more than your mortgage probably for flood insurance. right
yeah,
now.
you're gonna have to pay for flood insurance.
Yeah.
so about that 2 and 10 foot rule,
Yeah.
my buddy down the Cape and Onset,
Yeah.
his pool that he put in and he wanted to do it over, I guess, or whatever. The building inspector made him put his pump and filter 10 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
You believe that? And he fought, I don't know how he made out with it, but
He
can you
probably
believe
didn't
it? He
win.
said it's nuts.
Well, no, it's like, just give you a quick example, not to keep you all night. I can have an underground parking garage in your house or in a multi-family. Your car can be under the flood level. Your heater has to be up above it. Because they figure your car can be pulled out, the heater cannot be disconnected. So all your mechanical has to stay above it, where all your vehicles can be underneath it. So that's to the point. It depends on the zone you hit, can go to that. And to our, like I dealt with one case prior town, the town denied them. They just went to the state DEP and they rubber stamped it and they came back and just built whatever, because it's a state law. So that's why,
Yeah.
to Patrick's point, they actually wrote the bit I read, like I've read it, in my limited understanding of it. It's good because again, 99% of it is the town is more a double check. We're a catch,
Yeah.
kind of like, oh yeah, you meet all these, you meet all the state, okay, you're good to go. It just gives us a notification really, because we can't deny it. We can, and then
Well, there's
the state
so
will say
there's a
you're
different
done.
way of looking at this too, and I didn't incorporate this. I left, I guess, as a special permit, but
Yeah.
some towns just have this factored in with the building permit process, and if they have like what's called like it's like a flood protection. I'm paraphrasing, but basically it's like
Yeah.
it's like a certain other like you can make another certificate that it complies with like flood your flood bylaw. So that's another thing too. We could make this with building permit instead of a special permit, which would probably
Probably get me killed.
I know. But
But it is
for that
allowed,
point,
yeah.
it's because it needs to be like, all right, we want to, you're building a
Yeah.
home, cool, but you're building in the floodplain, okay, we gotta
Yeah.
make sure, check,
Yeah,
you're good.
and then like send the conservation, but
Yeah.
that'd be the only hold up, but to be no special permit or anything, because again,
Yeah.
you're doing, it's a checklist. It's not actually you have to move stuff, right? You're doing a checklist. Are you going to be at this height? Is your finished product going to be at this height? Yeah, you meet it. You're allowed to do it by state law.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, it's a mix. Some towns have special permits, sometimes do it as a building permit, so it's just.
So Patrick, you want to set the next meeting?
Yeah,
Excuse me one second, number 6 in the parking, is there gonna be a parking garage allowed with the ADU?
no. So I asked that question, number 6 is just asking about new parking.
Oh,
So you
yeah.
have to give one parking space, but I did ask the council on that and they said, no, you don't, you can set your ADU that it's 900 square feet, that's it, you can't add on a garage, you can't do it. If you want to do a standalone garage over on the other side of your property and go, I'm building a garage there because I can with accessory use, and you can say, well, you're renting the ADU, you can use the garage over there, it's fine, but because that's an accessory use, it's a different use. This is use, and the use is 900 square feet,
So
that's it.
you
You
can
can't
build
attach.
a detached, you could build a garage detached.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's where we can come into play on that, then we can use, so our zoning says, all combined together, you're allowed to do enough accessory dwelling units that is over, that maxes at 40% of your gross floor area of your main house. So you can't just do lump of garages, and lot coverage as well, we've that to play with, but no, you don't have to do a parking garage attached to it, you actually can restrict that as well.
And we already talked about the setbacks, all the setbacks.
Yeah, we
We'll match the standard setbacks, yeah.
Everyone has.
And
So-
add the landscaping, driveway, all the things if we can.
If
do-
we can
do
stick
that.
those in, yeah.
So,
So,
for next meeting, what I hope to have, and especially after talking to Carolyn, more kind of put together what we talked about draft ADU, any changes I have from the floodplain, and just because I'll get more guidance from Carolyn, and if this changes, I'll let you know. But I think what I'm thinking is probably the cleanup article encompasses mostly sections 1 through 4. And then we kind of take that as a phased approach. I thought of 5 as well, because there's a few provisions, not the table of use, but
Okay.
the other provisions of 5. Yeah, the table of use is its own separate thing.
Yeah.
But like, there's those other provisions, which I had questions on tonight, but we did not get to those because it's a lot to talk about. That one I'm kind of 50-50 on, but 1 through 4 for definite, I'm gonna get a draft bylaw, or draft bylaws, I'm sorry, draft amendments, sections 1 through 4 with the changes that we've kind of agreed are cleanup based,
Yeah,
alright?
good.
I would recommend, again,
Yeah.
to the board, get a meeting like I know we've been doing a month or 5 weeks out, or try and get a little earlier because,
Yeah.
again, when's the planning board meeting in November?
Seven.
7th.
yeah,
So 7th, so November's gone on us. So
yeah.
we have to have something ready to go for December meeting.
Well, that was a goal anyway, to
Yeah.
get them before
It's
December.
just, you know, John and I gave a fairly lengthy summary at the
Yep.
last, it's
Yep.
two
I like
planning board meetings ago.
Yep.
I know it didn't go over so well, because it was late at the time, but it was, we
Yeah.
wasn't late, we did it first, but
Yeah.
it's very important to keep them up to date, I
Yeah.
feel, yeah.
Are you guys meeting November 21st?
No,
No? Okay.
No.
So that's what I was.
So, yeah, I guess the really,
so you're talking about first Thursday of November, first Thursday of December, that's
or
it.
yeah, December's will be ready.
Is the
we have to
one
be
we
ready
need to
for.
get ready
Yeah.
for because
Because the goal is, yeah, get that before you take
Yeah.
first comments, see where you
Yeah.
guys want in terms of sponsorship, and
Yeah.
then be in a position that if we need to make any changes.
yeah, because I think the warrant that when are you in January? Have you decided yet?
So usually
Oh,
sometimes we don't meet the first Thursday in January,
We-
but,
Depends when.
The first Thursday is like the second or something.
yeah, so we
Yeah.
won't
don't-
meet then, yeah, so it'd be the third,
Which is getting close because again I believe I
yeah.
think it is. I think it's January 21st.
Yeah.
Our article closes, so we have to get something in front of the board, get it accepted,
Yeah,
get it
you-
sponsored,
I
and
I
get the
think-
warrant out. Otherwise,
So we
the
want-
I
article's
think it
closed.
should be
Our next
the
meeting,
December.
December, yeah.
at
We-
least early enough in November,
Mhm.
or
Yeah,
third week or something, to give us time to have something ready to hand in for the December.
yeah, because we're probably going to get
Yeah,
something.
no, we want to, I guess,
Yeah.
be in a position to provide draft articles to the full planning board
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
discussion in December.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what's
that
the
makes
date of the
sense.
next meeting?
So next meet, if we want to meet for November,
Something on the third week or something, because we gotta run into Thanksgiving, people away.
yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
week of the 11th to the 15th. Is that what it's like the second full week?
So the 11th,
November?
November, yeah.
so the 11th will be out because that's Veterans Day.
Okay,
So if you want to meet the Wednesday, the 13th,
I
that
can
work?
do the 13th, November 13th. Is that how's that?
As long,
Yeah. I think
as
we
long as
can
there's
do.
no zoning, I have to go, I wanna go.
Zoning is only on
It'll be
the
helpful.
6th and the 18th.
So, 13th, you said?
13th, so that's
yeah.
1,
I
2.
think I have
Seems
another
so.
meeting then.
That's 3 weeks out. Because that's things we need to get something for. Because again, if we present in December, if this board presents in December, and the planning board look through it and go, okay, we want this tweaked and this tweaked,
Mhm.
we have to
Yeah,
get it back
back.
ready for January, and that's the final draft because that has to go to warrant article right then and there. Because after that, then we're cut out till next year, till next October.
Well, we went over this again with town council, you can change an article
Yeah, but-
until the warrant goes to
Yeah.
print, but,
If we can get like 90%
yeah.
planned
Yeah.
for them, and then if whatever comments we get from the
Some tweaks,
boards,
Yeah.
something, yeah.
so we can tweaks that, because we'll need to get, because we have to go to planning board, get that set up. And again, if you're in the 2nd or 3rd week of January, especially the 2nd week of January, then we can get in front in time for the warrant.
Yeah.
So you
So
have
does
a
the, does the 14th work as well for anybody? I
The
don't know.
14th?
13th or 14th, so that'd be the.
14th is okay with me.
Wednesday or Thursday?
And that's not
Yeah, there's no
the,
meeting
that's
for
the
us.
second
It's a
Thursday.
Thursday.
It's the
Second
second Thursday.
Yeah, that would work.
of the month.
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
You good?
But the 13th?
14th.
14th.
14th, yep.
Okay.
That's much
I think
better
so,
for
let me
me,
just,
thank you.
hold on a second.
Yep.
14, yeah.
Okay. So.
Thank you,
Thursday-
Patrick, thank you,
Thursday.
John,
Yeah.
for leading us through this process.
Absolutely. So, just a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.